Chapter 490, Transcendent Mortal. Returning to the appraiser hall, Zhongxian immediately headed to his living quarters, secluded himself within a chamber, and immediately activated the spirit-gathering formation. Having collected innumerable books, learned 2 dans of Heaven's Path formation art, sapped dry his sword intent, saber intent, and spear intent, Zhongxian was already terribly exhausted. If not for an adamant will driving him, he would have long collapsed. Sitting at the center of the spirit-gathering formation, he flicked his hands and a pile of spirit stones appeared around him. TZZZZZZZZZZZ. As soon as the spirit stones were placed in the formation, the spiritual energy harnessed within was immediately extracted. As though vegetables being placed within an oiled wok, a sizzling sound could be heard. After which, the concentration of spiritual energy in the surrounding started rising swiftly. 3-fold, 4-fold, 5-fold. In the blink of an eye, the concentration in the area had already reached 6-fold of the surroundings. Pili Pala. As spiritual energy was being drawn rapidly, some of the spirit stones started crumbling. Paying it no heed, Zhongxian continued adding in more spirit stones to fuel the formation. Eventually, when the concentration finally reached 10-fold, Zhongxian stopped. At this concentration, it was already no different from the rate of absorbing spiritual energy from the spirit stones straight already. Begin. Since all preparations were done, Zhongxian immediately widened the pores across his entire body to absorb the thick spiritual energy in the surroundings rapidly. Then, converting them into Heaven's Path Shenqi, he refilled the energy expenditure he had incurred before. 2 hours later, his fatigue disappeared without a trace and he felt revitalized. He had finally reached his peak condition. Breakthrough. Muttering softly, the overflowing Heaven's Path Shenqi in his body began to strike at the barriers restraining his further progress. Catcher. After a seemingly long period of time, a crisp sound reminiscent of a small chick breaking out of its shell sounded. As though having knocked down a ceiling capping him, Zhongxian's body underwent an astonishing metamorphosis. Nourished, every single cell on his body and his soul were undergoing a rapid qualitative evolution. His lifespan, which was capped at 100, began rising at a speed visible to the eye. 110, 120, 130. His muscles and skin seemed to have been reborn, and they became even more supple and powerful. Of one's entire life, the growth stage at which one had the best skin was infancy. During that period time, one's body would be overflowing with vitality, allowing all injuries to heal swiftly. But along with the rise in one's age, as one consumed material food and the impurities in one's body started to increase, one's body would start to decline. As one's regenerative function lost out to the decline, one's bodily functions would gradually fail. The transcendent mortal realm served to overcome this limit. One who succeeded in the breakthrough would be brought back to their prime. Even a person who had a single foot in the grave would be overflowing with vitality. Even though the Heaven's Path Shenqi that Zhongxian cultivated was incomparably pure and was highly beneficial to both his body and his soul, it still wasn't sufficient to grant him the strength and lifespan of a transcendent mortal. Thus, before this breakthrough, he was still constrained by the limits of a mortal. This was the difference in the level of existence. Take an ant and an elephant for example. Even the strongest ant could never defeat the weakest elephant. Thus, having this step into new realms, his body seemed to have been nourished by the most concentrated energy of the world, making him feel incredibly energized and revitalized. Continue. After reaching the prolonged longevity realm, Zhongxian threw out another bunch of spirit stones and continued driving the transcendent mortal one dan Heaven's Path divine art. Just like that, he gradually broke through the various bottlenecks in his cultivation. Prolonged longevity realm primary stage. Prolonged longevity realm intermediate stage. Prolonged longevity realm advanced stage. 2 hours later, Zhongxian finally reached prolonged longevity realm pinnacle. And at that moment, his lifespan had been increased from 100 to 200 years. At prolonged longevity realm pinnacle, one's lifespan would be doubled. When he exhaled deeply, unlike the usual turbid gas filled with impurities that were clogging up his meridians, it carried the light fragrance of nature. Having reached the level of a transcendent mortal, one's physical body would possess the quality similar to a newborn infant, untarnished by impurities or pollutants. Due to the overwhelming vitality within a child, it was extremely rare for them to suffer from bad breath. The current Zhongxian was also the same. Hearing, sight, smell. My 5 senses have been significantly enhanced as well. Opening his eyes and looking at the distance, he could see the ants several dozen meters away clearly. In fact, even the singing of the canaries several hundred meters away were crystal clear to his ears. The rise in his cultivation realm had enhanced his 5 senses significantly. His reaction speed had increased by 2-fold. The enhanced senses made it easier for him to harmonize with the nature, thus facilitating the absorption of spiritual energy and increasing his rate of cultivation. No wonder there was the saying beneath the transcendent mortals are all ants. Only upon reaching this realm could one understand how fearsome it was. It seems like Ding Hong is one of the weaker cultivators at prolonged longevity realm. Otherwise, it would definitely be impossible for me to subdue him so easily. Upon reaching this level, Zhongxian realized how fortunate he was in his fight with Ding Hong back then. Without proper guidance, that fellow had fumbled his way through the realms. Even though he had successfully made the breakthrough, he was one of the weakest ones of the tier. If Zhongxian had met with a transcendent mortal One-Dan cultivator from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance back then instead, he would definitely have been in for a hard fight. After reaching transcendent mortal One-Dan pinnacle, my strength, when totaled up, adds up to more than 200,000 ding. Clenching his fists tightly, Zhongxian chuckled in joy. At prolonged longevity realm, only one's lifespan would be enhanced. As such, before reaching transcendent mortal 2-Dan, one's strength would be capped at 100,000. On the other hand, Zhongxian had already achieved that might at half-transcension realm. At this moment, along with the rise in his cultivation realm, his strength had increased by 2 times, thus reaching 200,000. In terms of just strength, he was already comparable to a transcendent mortal 2-Dan origin energy realm intermediate stage expert. At origin energy realm primary stage, one would possess the strength of 150,000 ding, 200,000 ding at intermediate stage, 250,000 ding at advanced stage, and 300,000 ding at pinnacle. And this was only in terms of zhenqi. If one were to factor in one's comprehension of the nature, the strength at one's disposal would be much greater. I can achieve breakthroughs swiftly via Heaven's Path divine art, but the expense is truly too great. Having gathered more than 1,000 cultivation technique manuals, Zhongxian understood the rate of cultivation of ordinary transcendent mortal One-Dan cultivators. Even the most talented person would require several years of hard work to climb from primary stage to pinnacle. However, Zhongxian had done the same in just 2 hours. Anyone who had witnessed the speed of his cultivation could definitely die of shock. But while the speed was astounding, the expense was fearsome as well. After the breakthrough, his Heaven's Path zhenqi had undergone a qualitative change, becoming even purer and less viscous. If the Heaven's Path zhenqi were sand grains that could easily pass through small spaces previously, then at this moment it was no different from flowing water. It could even slip through gaps that were indiscernible to the eye. With the increase in the purity of his zhenqi, naturally, the requirements for Zhongxian's spiritual energy rose proportionately as well. Even though he had earned several 10,000 spirit stones through various means, there wasn't much of it that was sufficiently pure for him to absorb. Almost 90% of the spiritual energy contained within each spirit stone went to waste along with his cultivation. He thought that the amount of spirit stones he had earned should be sufficient for him to reach transcendent mortal 3-Dan or 4-Dan, but from the looks of it, he was being too naive. The spirit stones that he had earned from the appraiser hall, the wager, guidance, and sale of the soulless metal humanoid, had nearly dried out. In other words, he used up nearly 50,000 spirit stones just to advance from prolonged longevity realm primary stage to prolonged longevity realm pinnacle. If it was anyone else, this amount of spirit stones would be more than sufficient for them to reach transcendent mortal 4-Dan. I'm back to becoming a poor bloke again. Smiling bitterly, Zhongxian shook his head helplessly. 3 days ago, he had to go through so much trouble just to make 50,000 spirit stones. He thought that he had earned a huge wealth capable of rivaling several kingdoms already. Yet, to think that he would be back to square one after a cultivation session. It was no wonder by people say cultivating was a money-burning business. From the looks of it, the description couldn't be any more apartment. Without sufficient spirit stones, it would be difficult for him to raise his cultivation realm. This kind of low-tier spirit stone is no longer sufficient to fuel my cultivation. Smiling bitterly, Zhongxian contemplated over his future course of action. Several 10,000 spirit stones were only sufficient to raise his cultivation by one realm. If he were to attempt to advance through origin energy or even higher realms, it was unimaginable how many spirit stones would be required. It felt as though even if he were to earn several 100,000 or even 1,000,000 spirit stones, it would still be far from sufficient to support his cultivation. Furthermore, there would come a point that the quality he required for his cultivation would exceed the purity of the spirit stone. At that point, all of the spirit stones would lose their worth. If Zhongxian wanted to raise his cultivation swiftly, he would have to find some way to obtain a middle-tier spirit stone. This kind of spirit stone possessed spiritual energy of extremely high purity, which was much easier and more convenient to absorb. 3 days is up. Luozhu should be done by now. I should hurry over to the Soul Oracle tomb to find a way to save Lu Chong. Standing up, Zhongxian walked out of the chamber. It was already the second day when Zhongxian went to the Formation Master Guild. After the hassle there and the 4 hours spent on cultivation after returning, it was already around the promised time they agreed on. This trip to the Soul Oracle tomb would determine whether Lu Chong could be awoken from his coma or not. Zhongxian would not allow any hiccups to occur. Heading to the lounge, he realized that Luozhu had already arrived. Zhao Ya and the others were also done with their cultivation, and they were standing by the side of the room. His students didn't let down his expectations. In 3 days' time, they had all reached Jizuan realm. This was especially so for Zhao Ya, who had reached Jizuan realm intermediate stage. From her aura, one could vaguely feel overwhelming power. Sun Qiong hadn't been slacking off the past 3 days as well. He had completely reinforced his cultivation as a transcendent mortal one Dan. Even though he was still a far way off from matching up to Zhongxian, as compared to his cultivation of Zhenqi realm a few months ago, he had come quite a long way in this limited period of time. Zhongsha. Upon noticing his arrival, everyone turned their gazes over. Are you done with the preparations? If so, let's set off, Zhongxian said. I'm done with the preparations. Luozhu nodded his head. The items he needed for the trip to the Soul Oracle tomb were all ready. Do you all intend to accompany us to the Soul Oracle tomb, or are you all returning to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? Zhongxian turned to Zhao Feiwu and the others. The Soul Oracle tomb is dangerous, so we'll pass on the offer. Jin Songhai was just about to reject the request when Zhao Feiwu interrupted. Of course we'll be following as well. I've only read about the soul oracles from ancient texts. If their inheritance can really be found in the tomb, then it'll be worth going through the danger. Gong. Gongzi, your body. Alarmed, Jin Songhai hurriedly persuaded. He wasn't weak, and he was confident of protecting the Gongzi under most circumstances. However, the Soul Oracle tomb was simply uncharted territories. It was a treacherous location even for him. Gongzi's cultivation was as good as null, and if they were to head there like that, he wasn't confident of ensuring the latter's safety. As the other party's subordinate, he didn't dare to take such risks. Don't worry. Even though my fighting prowess is lacking, I am more than capable of protecting myself. Zhao Feiwu chuckled lightly. Besides, isn't Zhongsha here? I am eagerly waiting to see how he will wreak havoc in the Soul Oracle tomb. But, hearing the other party's resolute voice, Jin Songhai was conflicted. However, he still gave in eventually. All right then, let's set off. Since everyone had already made up their minds, they climbed onto the back of the spirit beast without any hesitation. This mount was Zhao Feiwu's spirit beast, and it had a wide back. Even though more than a dozen people were riding on it, it wasn't cramped at all. Spreading its wings, it soared into the vast skies. Soul Oracle Tomb, here we come. Chapter 491, Coke's Ridge. A spirit beast soared in the boundless skies. It was the third day since Zhongxian left Honghai City. The direction which the Soul Oracle tomb was located at a direction opposite of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The geographical terrain consisted of winding mountains reminiscent of a massive dragon lying the ground, ready to rise into the heavens at any moment. Within the room on the back of the spirit beast, Zhongxian stood in front of the window with his eyes closed. In the past 3 days, he had reinforced his cultivation as a transcendent mortal one-dan pinnacle cultivator. At this moment, he was currently reorganizing the information he had collected on soul oracles in his mind. Back then, in order to accurately determine the identity of the soulless metal humanoid, Hall Master Sai had collected quite a few books on soul oracles. After duplicating those books from the appraiser hall, Zhongxian hadn't been able to find time to browse through them. Since he had some free time now, he decided to make use of this opportunity look through them. Compile. Muttering softly, the correct information recorded in the dozens of books in the Library of Heaven's Path gathered together to form a new book. All of the Soul Oracle-related books collected shared a common description on the occupation, mysterious and fearsome. Their deep knowledge concerning the subject of souls made them a fearsome existence. It didn't take long for Zhongxian to read through the entire book, and he shook his head. The heritage of the occupation had been severed and there weren't many records left on it. The books remaining were incomprehensive and useful information was terribly limited. After browsing through the books, Zhongxian was left with more doubts than he'd started with. Forget it, I'll just deal with whatever that comes my way. Knowing that there wasn't any useful information to be derived from the books, Zhongxian sighed. Opening his eyes, he turned to Sun Qiong, Zhao Ya, and the others and said, "All of you come here. Teacher, young master." The group gathered around Zhongxian. Seeing the grave expression on Zhongxian's face, Zhao Feiwu asked, "Since Zhongxian has some matters to delegate, should we step aside for a moment?" There were many secrets within a teacher-student lineage that outsiders shouldn't know of. Zhongxian waved his hands. "There's no need for it, it isn't something major. I just want to remind them of some things that they have to take note of when we're at the Soul Oracle tomb." "Oh, things to take note of? Then can we listen in too?" Zhao Feiwu, Hall Master Sai, and the others' eyes lit up, and they hurriedly turned their attention over. Who was the young man before him? He was the master teacher who could even expel a soul oracle from a person's body, not to mention, he was a 5-star appraiser and quasi-4-star formation master. How could the advice from such a person be anything ordinary? If they were to listen to his words, they would definitely have a much better chance at survival in the Soul Oracle tomb. "Of course, feel free." Ignoring the excited crowd, Zhongxian turned to his students and subordinate and spoke gravely. "Take note of this. When we're at the Soul Oracle tomb, if anyone gets possessed, make sure not to devour the other party's soul carelessly. There are questions I would like to ask. If the soul that possessed Luo Zhu was still alive, Zhongxian would surely be able to derive useful information from him. If so, there might be no need for him to take the risk and venture into the Soul Oracle tomb." The more he thought about it, the more regretful he felt about the matter. Thus, he made sure to instruct the others properly this time around. Otherwise, if this bunch of kids and Sun Qiong were to rush to devour the soul oracles later on, it would be too late. Yes. Zhao Ya and the others hurriedly nodded their heads. In order to protect them, their teacher had left a surge of zhenqi within each of them. Even if some soul oracle were to charge up to them, they would at least be able to avoid being possessed. "Yuan, that's more like it. All right, that's all. You all should continue cultivating." After finishing his instructions, Zhongxian waved his hands. Nodding, Zhao Ya and the others nodded and dispersed. Just like that. The others thought that Zhongxian was going to conduct a detailed briefing, so they were filled with expectations. However, after hearing those words, the mouths of Zhao Feiwu, Hall Master Sai, and the others twitched. They nearly fainted on the spot. There was no one who wouldn't be filled with trepidation when heading toward a soul oracle tomb, fearful that something might catch them off guard. Yet, this fellow made it seem as though he and his students were just going on a picnic. What in the world was with that official "allow me to have a bite first before you all devour your food" announcement? Cough cough. Luo Zhu even choked on his saliva. For this trip to the Soul Oracle tomb, he had prepared many things. In fact, He had even written his will. And yet, the other party seemed to treat it like a leisure walk, and there wasn't the slightest worry in his attitude. Humans were truly born different. Suppressing his frustration, Luo Zhu glanced downward at the geographical terrain, did a rough calculation on their current location, and walked up to Zhongxian. "Zhongshe, we're about to arrive at the Soul Oracle tomb." Zhongxian looked around and asked, "About to arrive? Where are we now?" "We're currently at the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's Ninefolds Mountain. 1,000 li of Ninefolds Mountain, 10,000 li of Red Ripple Sea. This is where the border with Mingxia Empire is located." Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. There was a map on the Myriad Kingdom Alliance in the appraiser hall, and Zhongxian had browsed through it. As such, he had a rough idea on the various landmarks across the empire. He had thought that the Soul Oracle tomb would be located in the middle of the alliance, so he was surprised to learn that they were at the border. Mingxia Empire was another empire of equivalent standing to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. They were also one of the 27 powers participating in the Master Teacher Tournament. The Ninefolds Mountain was the boundary between the two powers, and battles broke out here often. As such, it was considered as one of the danger zones. It isn't at the border yet, it is located at the third fold, Coke's Ridge, Luo Zhu said. The Ninefolds Mountain consisted of a total of 9 folds. There was a more specific name for each fold, and Coke's Ridge was located at the third fold. Legend had it that a powerful expert was once assaulted by a spirit beast stampede passing through the region. Thus, he calmly coaxed them and eventually, the spirit beasts decided to back off, thus came the name of the Coke's Ridge. Spiritual energy was concentrated in this region, thus resulting in many spirit beasts and savage beasts roaming the area. Thus, even though it wasn't the border of the two empires, it was considered as one of the more dangerous locations. Most people would avoid coming here if possible. There are many spirit beasts on the Coke's Ridge, so we can't fly over. Otherwise, there's a chance that we might be assaulted by aerial spirit beast. Upon hearing the name of the location where they were headed to, Jin Songhai frowned. A transcendent mortal expert was still incapable of flight yet. As such, it could prove to be dangerous if they came under the assault of other aerial spirit beasts. After all, if they were to fall from the sky, at such a high altitude, they would most probably die immediately upon contact with the ground. Thus, very few people would dare to ride a flying mount through where aerial spirit beasts were numerous. Elder Jin is right. However, there's no need to worry. Since Gong's spirit beast has reached transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle, most spirit beasts wouldn't dare trifle with it. We should be able to fly straight to our destination. But of course, we can't land directly at the location itself. There's a formidable aerial spirit beast living in the vicinity of the Soul Oracle tomb. I'm afraid that we might incur its wrath if we were to approach carelessly. "You mean that demon sank beast?" Jin Songhai asked. "Elder, you also know about this beast?" Luo Zhu was taken aback. "Of course I do. On top of its ability of flight, it has reached transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle, thus making it a fearsome existence. It has terrorized some of the neighboring villages and killed on numerous occasions. In order to deal with it, the Alliance has tried sending many experts to kill it several times, only to end in failure." With a grim expression, Jin Songhai continued, "Furthermore, on top of its speed and strength, it is said to possess a dragon bloodline, thus granting it nearly invincible defense. As such, it's a troublesome adversary to deal with. Even the Beast Hall isn't able to do anything about it. You said that the Soul Oracle is near to its nest. May I know how far away it is?" "It is only several hundred meters away from its nest. The last time I came, I studied its habits and sneaked in while it was busy looking for food. There are more of us this time around, so it will be easier for us to get caught. Thus, I think we should proceed carefully," Luo Zhu said. "Several hundred meters? That's a little too close." Jin Songhai frowned. At transcendent mortal 4-dan clarifying turbidity realm, one's soul would gain a certain level of autonomy from one's body. Under such a state, just by one's senses, one could easily perceive the happenings within a radius of several hundred meters around one. At such a distance, It was almost impossible for them to alarm the other party even if they were to proceed carefully. Even though Jin Songhai was a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert as well, he was only at primary stage. On top of that, the demon Sank beast was an aerial spirit beast possessing a dragon bloodline. He wasn't a match for the other party at all. Even though he could resort to poison, he needed the other party to be unguarded first. Putting aside how the demon Sank beast was wary of humans, the dragon bloodline also provided it with an extremely high immunity to poison. If he were to fail to kill it in a single shot, he might incur the other party's fury and cause everyone's death. The Soul Oracle tomb was already dangerous by itself. To think that there would be such a ferocious fellow camping in the surroundings on top of that. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Zhu said, "It is an extremely short distance, but after hiding in this region for 3 months, I managed to find some patterns in its behavior. As long as we proceed carefully, we shouldn't get noticed. Since you managed to find some patterns in its behavior, why don't we do it this way?" After contemplating for a moment, Jin Songhai turned to Zhongxian and asked, "Zhongshe, shall we stop 2 kilometers away from the demon Sank's nest and slowly walk over?" Unknowingly, Zhongxian had become the de facto leader of the group. It had become a habit for them to look to him for answers. "All right." Zhongxian nodded. He had never been here before, and he didn't know about the demon Sank beast or how strong it was. Since the duo had already discussed it, he thought that it should be fine to go along with their decision. 2 kilometers wasn't much of a distance to cultivators of their capability. "All right. Tell me when we're nearing the location. I'll have the tamed beast make a landing," Jin Songhai said. "UN." Luo Zhu nodded. While the others were discussing, Sun Qiong, upon seeing Hall Master Sai's face turn pale after hearing about the demon Sank beast, couldn't hold himself back and asked, "Have you heard of that demon Sank beast as well?" "Of course I've heard of it." Hall Master Sai smiled bitterly. "That fellow is incomparably strong. It's said that the head of the Beast Hall has once led 12 elders to encircle and subdue it, but the operation eventually ended in failure." 12 elders. That's right. Those who are qualified to become elders in the Beast Hall possess cultivation, at least that of my level. Much can be said about the strength of the demon Sank beast given how they failed despite mobilizing so many expert. Hall Master Sai shook his head. Not only is that fellow capable of flight, due to its dragon bloodline, it possesses incredible defense as well. Even spirit intermediate tier weapons could do no harm to it. On top of that, it has a violent temper and it is extremely territorial. If it is really guarding that area, it won't be easy for us to approach. "Are you afraid?" Interrupting the other party's words, Sun Qiong uttered in disdain. "If you are scared, you might as well leave right now. To think that you're still the head of the appraiser hall." "Me afraid?" Seeing the other party's expression, Hall Master Sai nearly fainted. To think that a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert like him would be looked down on and mocked by an insignificant butler. Infuriated, he was just about to lash out when Luo Zhu's voice echoed, "We're here." After which, the aerial spirit beast began on its descent, headed straight for the winding mountain range. Chapter 492, Someone is Here. Jumping off the back of the spirit beast, Zhongxian took in a deep breath and immediately felt the dense spiritual energy in the surroundings. The concentration of spiritual energy here was indeed much higher than anywhere else. "It's nearly twofold," Zhongxian evaluated. It was no wonder why Jin Songhai and Luo Zhu said that there were many spirit beasts here. With such dense spiritual energy, one's rate of cultivation would definitely be fast. Under such circumstances, it wasn't surprising for spirit beasts to be attracted to the region. Regardless of whether it was a spirit beast or savage beast, just like humans, they preferred areas with high concentration of spiritual energy. Activating the Eye of Insight, Zhongxian surveyed the surroundings. As expected, he saw the traces of many savage beasts and spirit beasts. Why are there so many footprints? Suddenly, Zhongxian's eyes fell on a particular spot. No too far away, on top of the claw prints of spirit beasts, he noticed some human footprints as well. There were nearly 10 of such trails, and judging from the moisture of the surrounding ground, those footprints seemed to be freshly made. Someone has just walked by here. Could they know about the Soul Oracle tomb as well? Seeing those footprints, Jin Songhai's eyebrows knitted together. A radius of 2 kilometers was about the limit of the demon-sank beast's perception. Before such danger, one should be eager to escape as far as possible. Why would anyone walk in to court their deaths? Unless there was a greater profit driving them. In other words, there was a good chance that someone knew about the existence of the Soul Oracle tomb as well. This ancient occupation might be mysterious and feared, but it was still a trove of knowledge and power. Many experts would definitely rush in if they were to learn of the location of the tomb. It was just like how the auction of the soulless metal humanoid managed to attract the attention of so many powers. Impossible. The location of the Soul Oracle tomb is deeply hidden. Even I had to spend a very long time searching before finding it despite possessing some hints on its location. Besides, when I left the tomb, I sealed tightly and concealed it. Luo Zhu shook his head. The inheritance of the Soul Oracles had been severed since ancient times. The only reason why he could find the Soul Oracle tomb was due to some information he retrieved from another ancient tomb. The seniors of the ancient tomb's owner had participated in the building of the Soul Oracle tomb, and they had left behind some hints on its location inside. It took him great effort to decipher the clues to pinpoint the Soul Oracle tomb to this area. He didn't think that there would be another person who would be as lucky as him. Then those footprints. Jin Songhai questioned doubtfully. I have no idea either. Even though he was certain that the location of the Soul Oracle tomb wouldn't be exposed, he couldn't help but feel slightly worried by those fresh footprints. Are these footprints pointed toward the direction of the Soul Oracle tomb? Zhong Xian asked. After calculating the direction for a moment, Luo Zhu replied. That's right. There's no point thinking about it here. Let's go up and take a look. Zhong Xian waved his hands. There was no point getting distressed over the matter here. If someone had really beaten them to it, they might as well just go forward to take a look. It would be best if they could share some information regarding the Soul Oracle tomb, and if not, he would find some way to deal with it then. Besides, these footprints did not necessarily mean that those people were headed for the Soul Oracle tomb. UN. Everyone nodded, and the group proceeded forward. The number of footprints are increasing. The further they advanced, the more footprints that appeared. It seemed like quite a substantial group was gathered here. Analyzing the footprints, Jin Songhai said, these footprints are extremely light, and the distance between every single footprint is almost identical. This means that those people possess a powerful control over the environment. From this, we can conclude the ones who left the footsteps behind were mostly transcendent mortal 2-dan or 3-dan expert. As a poison master, he was often pursued by his enemies. Thus, in order to protect himself, he had specially studied tracking skills, granting him exceptional acuity in his assessment toward such matters. UN. Zhong Xian nodded. Zhong Xian had never studied books regarding tracking, but based on the feedback from the Eye of Insight, he came to the same conclusion as well. Knowing that the other party was a large group of experts, Jin Songhai's face turned grim. As he advanced forward, he sent a telepathic message to Zhao Feiwu. Gongzi, if there is any danger, summon the tamed beast immediately and leave along with the rest. Zhao Feiwu turned to him and asked, what about you? Even though my fighting prowess isn't top-notch in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, I still do possess some life-preserving skills. If I have to take care of the rest of you while in danger, none of us will survive, Jin Songhai said. As a poison master, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. The one thing that poison masters didn't fear at all was encirclement. All right. Seeing that the other party had already made up his mind, Zhao Feiwu nodded. Even though plundering was rare under the influence of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, it didn't mean that it didn't happen at all. If they were to come under attack in the wilderness, there would be no one to redress their grievances. Even if she was the princess of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, considering how difficult it would be to trace down the culprits, it was unlikely that the enemies would give them any slack. You all be careful as well. Zhong Xian turned to instruct Zhao Ya and the others as well before walking in front of them. Even if he were to meet with danger, with the Eye of Insight, Library of Heaven's Path, and Heaven's Path movement art, he was still able to take care of himself. However, his students had just achieved a breakthrough not too long ago, and they had yet to reach transcendent mortal realm as well. Thus, they might be unable to cope. Yes. Seeing their teachers back in front of them, Zhao Ya and the others found their anxiety disappearing. Their teacher's silhouette felt like a reliable mountain to them. Regardless of where they were, as long as their teacher was with them, they felt as though there was nothing that they couldn't overcome. After carefully advancing forward for around a kilometer, the group passed a ridge and saw a valley before them. The valley was extremely deep, and they couldn't see the end at a single glance. It was filled with all kinds of trees and plants, and due to the high concentration of spiritual energy, they were exceptionally lush. At this point, the footprints from before disappeared as well. Luo Zhu walked forward and said, "Zhongshe, the Soul Oracle tomb is within the valley." Yuan. Zhongxian nodded his head. He was just about to instruct the group to be careful when Huala, a few figures appeared from the bushes and blocked the advance of the group. "Identify yourselves." Hostility could be heard the other party's deep voice. Zhongxian glanced at the few figures before him. There was a total of 6 men, and all of them were in their 30s. Vaguely, one could sense an aura no weaker than a transcendent mortal 2 dan from them. The strongest of them, a grey-robed man, had even reached transcendent mortal 3 dan, yin-yang realm. With this kind of strength, he was on par even with that 4-star master teacher Zhongxian met before, Song Chao. "Who are you all?" Stepping forward, Jin Songhai revealed his cultivation. "What do you all intend to do by hiding here?" "Transcendent mortal 4 dan?" Upon feeling the immense strength Jin Songhai was exerting, the faces of the men paled. They glanced at one another, and eventually, the grey-robed man said, "Elder, our elders are currently doing something inside and they mustn't be interrupted now. I beseech you all to take a detour instead." "Detour?" Frowning, Jin Songhai's face darkened. "We have matters to attend inside as well. I ask of you to give way. Elder, do you intend to barge through?" Seeing that the other party had no intention to give in, the men's complexion turned awful. "Hualala." Crisp sounds echoed in the air as they drew their swords. Even though they were only transcendent mortal 2 dan and 3 dan cultivators, they had no intention of stepping back either. "Ha! Even if I do intend to barge through, do you all think you can stop me?" With a powerful and authoritative disposition, Jin Songhai stepped forward. Chapter 493, Hall Master of the Beast Hall. "I have to try even if I can't." The grey-robed man didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward and beckoned for the others. Then, all of a sudden, with a light metallic buzz, the few men charged forward simultaneously, and their weapons formed a net of swords headed straight toward Jin Songhai. Their cultivation was far inferior to Jin Songhai, but the powerful sword chi they were emitting felt indomitable. A collaborative formation? Jin Songhai frowned. The movements of these men were complementing one another via the usage of a battle formation. Furthermore, from the looks of it, the formation didn't seem to be weak at all. Even with Jin Songhai's superior cultivation realm, he would probably be in for a difficult fight. The main function of this kind of collaborative formation was to amplify the strength of a group to match up to a cultivator far stronger than them. It was just like how Zhao Ya, Yuan Dao, and the others were not a match for Lu Xun individually back then, but through the use of a collaborative formation, they still managed to subdue the latter. Of the 6 men, the strongest person, the grey-robed man, was only a transcendent mortal 3 dan and the rest were all transcendent mortal 2 dan. However, through the use of a formation, they could display strength several folds higher. A wave of sword chi gushed straight at Jin Songhai. Even when their opponent was a transcendent mortal 4 dan expert, they were still able to stand their ground. Without the slightest fluster, Jin Songhai stomped his feet on the ground and charged forward. Zhenqi gushed into his fingers as he compressed the surrounding air, deflecting the sword chi that were rushing at him. This was the first time Zhongxian had seen a transcendent mortal 4 dan expert fighting at his full strength, and the battle was way beyond his expectations. Every single one of Jin Songhai's moves seemed to carry a unique order. His blows were heavy at a moment, light in the next, and the air in the surroundings seemed to move to complement his movements. Even though the other party's formation was profound and formidable, it wouldn't be easy for them to hurt him. However, he was restricted by the 6 swords. It would be difficult for him to break out of it within a short period of time. Admittedly, if he were to resort to his poison, he could subdue the other party immediately. However, there wasn't an irreconcilable grudge between him and those men. Also, they weren't worthy of having him reveal his hand as well. Peng peng peng. Both sides clashed furiously with one another, but the shockwave was only confined to an area of several dozen meters. This revealed the precise control they had over their strength. Let me help you. Seeing that it would be impossible for the fight to end in the short run, Hall Master Sai was fearful that if they were to be stalled here for too long, the demon-sank beast might be alarmed. Thus, bellowing deeply, he stepped into the battle as well. His fighting prowess wasn't inferior to Jin Songhai in the least. With his entry, the collaborative sword formation immediately fell apart, and the 6 young men were jolted backward. After several collisions, their swords were knocked away and they fell into a weak state. Given their cultivation realm, it was impossible for them to face 2 4-dan experts simultaneously. All right. Seeing that the 6 men were on the verge of defeat, Hall Master Sai and Jin Songhai prepared to advance forward to deal the final blow when Zhongxian suddenly shook his hands. That's enough, we're all on the same side. Hearing those words, everyone was taken aback. Could it be that Zhongshe knew the other party? On the same side. The grey-robed man was perplexed, and he looked at Zhongxian with a bewildered glance. I am Beast Tamer Zhongxian. Ignoring the other party's attitude, Zhongxian stepped forward, flicked his wrist, and took out a Beast Tamer emblem. If I'm not wrong, all of you are Beast Tamers as well, right? Upon seeing the emblem, the few men immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Flicking their wrists as well, they took out their emblems. Just as Zhongxian had said, they were all Beast Tamers. Frowning, Hall Master Sai asked, "You're all from the Beast Hall?" Probably only the Beast Hall had the capability to dispatch 6 Beast Tamers of such strength simultaneously. Yes. The grey-robed man nodded. I am Sai Xiaoyu from the Appraiser Hall. May I know if your Hall Master is Han Chong or Luo Ming? Hall Master Sai asked. It's Hall Master Han Chong. Sai Xiaoyu. Ah, it's Hall Master Sai. Pardon me for my discourtesy. Hearing the name, the grey-robed man was taken aback for a moment before a figure appeared in his head and he immediately jolted in fear. He hurriedly clasped his fist and apologized. There were 2 Beast Hall branches in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and their Hall Masters were Han Chong and Luo Ming respectively. On the other hand, there was only one Appraiser Hall, and it was located in Honghai City. Even though the cultivation of this Hall Master Sai might be inferior to their Hall Master, due to the vast connections of the Appraiser Hall, they were both of equal standing. Given that the other party was of equivalent standing to their Hall Master, it wasn't a big deal to lose to him. Yuan, so you're old Han's men. I am old buddies with your Hall Master Han. Upon knowing the background of the few men before him, Hall Master Sai nodded his head. Then, with slight doubt in his eyes, he asked, Your Beast Hall branch should be in the vicinity of the Myriad Kingdom City. What are you all doing here? The Beast Hall branch which Han Chong was the Hall Master of was located in the mountains near Myriad Kingdom City. The Ninefold Mountains were several 100,000 kilometers away from their base. What could they be doing here? Reporting to Hall Master Sai, our Hall Master is currently in the midst of taming the demon-sank beast. Knowing that the other party was an old buddy of their Hall Master, the grey-robed man decided not to hide the matter. Taming the demon-sank beast? Didn't your Hall Master attempt it 3 years ago but it ended in failure? Hall Master Sai was perplexed. The one who led the 12 elders to surround the demon-sank 3 years ago but ended in failure was exactly this Hall Master Han Chong. Could it be that the other party was unwilling to give up and came here to attempt it once more? Ever since the failure 3 years ago, our Hall Master has been coming here whenever he finds time to interact with the demon-sank beast. After such a long period of time of companionship, their relationship has grown rather intimate. Thus, he intends to give it his all to tame it today. In order to prevent anyone who interrupting him, he ordered us to guard this area and prevent any savage beasts or strangers in, the grey-robed man replied. Hall Master Sai nodded his head. Zhongxian also finally understood the situation. Unlike Zhongxian, ordinary beast tamers didn't possess Heaven's Pathshanqi, and they couldn't use it as a bait to convince a savage beast to submit to them. Thus, they could only rely on the fellowship built over a long period of time and win its goodwill to tame it. Back then, when Mo Yu tamed the viridescent eagle, she also used all kinds of treasure to attract it before winning its goodwill. Given Hall Master Han Chong's ability, 3 years was probably more than sufficient for him to earn great intimacy with the demon-sank beast. Thus, gauging that it was about time, he decided to tame it in a single go. Hearing that his old buddy was currently trying to tame Spirit Beast whose notoriety was known in the entirety of the Alliance, Hall Master Sai hesitated for a moment before asking, "Can we go over to take a look? If he were to meet with trouble, we may be able to offer some assistance." Beast taming was by no means an easy task. It wasn't too much if one could tame it, but failure could potentially unleash the wrath of the Spirit Beast onto one. It was said that in the battle 3 years ago, Hall Master Chong was so severely injured that he had to recuperate on the bed for more than a month. "Ah, all right." After a moment of contemplation, the grey-robed man finally nodded his head. "However, you all must be careful as well. The demon-sank beast is arrogant and violent, make sure not to incur its ire." Given Hall Master Sai's esteemed standing, they were clearly not in the position to stop the other party. In any case, the beast taming hadn't started yet and the Hall Master and the other elders were still in the midst of the preparatory phase. Thus, the latter probably wouldn't blame him if he were to bring some men in. "Rest assured, I am an old buddy of your Hall Master. I won't interfere in his affairs." Hall Master Sai smiled. It was beneath the dignity of an expert of Hall Master Sai's caliber to lie. Thus, the grey-robed nodded his head before turning to the other men and instructing, "The rest of you shall remain guard here. Don't allow any savage beasts or strangers to pass through." After which, he gestured forward and said, "Hall Master Sai, this way please." The group followed along. A short distance later, the lush mountain forest suddenly opened up. A waterfall flowed down from the mountain cliff, forming a lake of several hundred meters wide. Not too far from the lake, an immense cavern could be seen. Outside the cavern stood a few elder, and they seemed to be waiting for something. Upon hearing the footsteps, they turned around, and the elder standing at the direct center was just about to lash out when he caught sight of Hall Master Sai within the crowd and his eyes lit up. "Hall Master Sai, why are you here?" "I just happened to be passing by. I was looking for some items when I was stopped by your men. From them, I learned that you intend to attempt taming the demon-sank beast once more. Thus, I decided to come over to take a look," Hall Master Sai said. The other party was the Hall Master of the Myriad Kingdom City Beast Hall, Han Chong. "You also know of my condition. The competition between the 2 beast halls in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance is intense, and only one of the Hall Masters will obtain the opportunity to study at Huanyu Empire. If I don't tame a spirit beast that towered over the others, there's no guarantee I will get the slot." Hall Master Han Chong smiled bitterly. The 2 beast halls in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance had always been competing with one another. For the opportunity to study at a higher-tiered beast hall, the 2 Hall Masters had been clashing with one another both in the shadows and in the open for several years already. There was nothing that could prove a beast tamer's capability more than taming a powerful spirit beast. Thus, for the past 3 years, Hall Master Han had been trying to tame this demon-sank beast to take the lead. "That's true. I heard that you've been trying to get close with it for the past 3 years. How is the progress?" Hall Master Sai asked. "There isn't much of a difference from before. The demon-sank beast possesses the dragon bloodline, thus giving rise to its arrogant and solitary personality. If it could be tamed that easily, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. If not for Huanyu Empire's envoy coming in a few days' time, I wouldn't be in such a rush as to thrash it out today." Hall Master Han shook his head. For a spirit beast of this tier, 3 years was still a little too short. However, Hall Master Han had no other choice. The envoy was about to arrive soon, and if he couldn't tame this fellow before then, he would be at a disadvantageous position as compared to Hall Master Han Ming. And if he were to fail the selections, it would be impossible for him to become a 5-star beast tamer in his lifetime. "Then the reason why you all are waiting here is..." Since they had decided they were going to tame the demon-sank beast, then where was the star of the show? Why would they be gathering here instead of looking for the demon-sank beast? It's inside the cavern now. That fellow usually only heads out to hunt during noon. It's still a little too early, so it's still sleeping. Hall Master Han gestured to the cavern. Ah. Hall Master Sai nodded his head. These are your juniors. After which, Hall Master Han turned to Zhongxian and the others and asked doubtfully. Cough cough. Upon hearing the other party ask if Zhongshe was his junior, Hall Master Sai immediately jolted in fear. He quickly tried to clarify the matter, but Zhongxian beat him to it. I am Zhongxian, Hall Master Sai's friend. Friend? Hall Master Han was taken aback. As a 4-star appraiser, Hall Master Sai's standing wasn't beneath his in any way. Why would he become a friend with a lad who wasn't even 20 yet? Perplexed, Hall Master Han asked, May I know what Brother Zhong's occupation is? Reporting to the Hall Master, he's a 2-star beast tamer. I saw his emblem just a moment ago. Before Zhongxian could reply, the grey-robed man by the side interjected. 2-star beast tamer? Hall Master Han's bizarre expression deepened. There were many of beast tamers of such level in the beast hall. When did Hall Master Sai fall so low as to become friends with such a person? Chapter 494, Snatching. So, little brother is a beast tamer as well. To be able to reach 2-star at such a young age, the younger generation sure is impressive. Even though Hall Master Han was perplexed, he didn't allow his true thoughts to slip through. Clasping his hands, he spoke politely before turning his attention away. A 2-star beast tamer under 20 was impressive, but in their beast hall, it wasn't a particularly rare sight. Hearing the other party's perfunctory words, Zhongxian couldn't be bothered to explain himself. His aim here was the Soul Oracle tomb. It didn't matter to him whether the other party viewed him highly or not. It would suffice as long as the other party didn't interfere in his affairs. Hall Master Han, Zhong. Seeing the attitude of his old buddy, Hall Master Sai immediately realized that the other party might be misunderstanding something. He immediately spoke up to explain the matter when the ground before them suddenly tremored and a loud voice echoed. Roar. A loud howl reminiscent of thunder boomed, and the leaves from the nearby withered trees immediately fell to the ground. Impressive. Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Just the voice in itself was sufficient to jolt a cultivator beneath Zhongshe realm to death. For a single roar to be so incredible, as expected of a famous spirit beast in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. It was indeed a fearsome existence. It's awake, let's begin. Hall Master Han's eyes lit up. He immediately turned around to instruct the elders. Upon hearing the instructions, the elders nodded and stepped forward. One of them flicked their wrist. Boom. The massive corpse of a spirit beast appeared on the ground. The corpse of a transcendent mortal 2-dan, deer-horde beast. You all even managed to hunt down one of those. Upon seeing the corpse, Zhao Feiwu's eyebrows leaped and a look of disbelief surfaced on her face. This spirit beast is incredible. Sun Qiong asked doubtfully. The deer-horde beast is only a transcendent mortal 2-dan spirit beast and it isn't particularly strong. However, it possesses extraordinary speed. Its meat is fresh and juicy, making it a favored prey among spirit beasts and cultivators. Unfortunately, their numbers are severely limited and there might not be a single one across the entire Ninefolds Mountain. It must have surely cost a lot of time and effort to capture one. Due to her illness, Zhao Feiwu wasn't able to move around freely. Thus, she devoted her time to books. Given the unique nature of the deer-horde beast, she remembered it clearly. Hearing the conversation of the two, the grey-robed man proudly explained, "Looks like you know quite a bit. This deer-horde beast took 17 beast tamers over a course of half a year to hunt. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this is the only hunted deer-horde beast within the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance at the moment. It'll be impossible to find a second one on the market. Even though the cultivation of deer-horde beast wasn't too high, it possessed high wariness and it was exceptionally cunning. If not for so many beast tamers being dispatched for it, it would surely be impossible to capture it." UN. Even though the other party was being narcissistic, Zhao Feiwu knew that there wasn't any mistake in saying so. It was indeed extremely difficult to capture this beast. Back then, a prince of the Alliance, the household of the Alliance head, was ill and required the heart of the deer-horde beast for treatment. Thus, the Alliance head residents offered a high monetary reward for the acquirement of this spirit beast, but there was no result for 5 whole years. Eventually, due to the lack of medicine, the prince's physical condition deteriorated and he eventually died. It was also because of this that she flipped through the books and learned of the deer-horde beast. Not only is the flesh of the deer-horse beast fresh and juicy, more importantly, this spirit beast feeds on spirit herbs. Despite its weak cultivation, it is overflowing with spiritual energy, making it no different from a tonic. If a spirit beast were to consume it, they would be able to easily overcome their current bottleneck and reach higher realms, Hall Master Sai interjected. In other words, it's a mobile realm breakthrough pill. I see. So, they are intending to use the corpse of this fellow to please the demon Sank beast. Coming to an understanding, Sun Qiong was astonished. To think that they would even procure such a rare and difficult-to-hunt spirit beast to tame this demon Sank beast. The Hall Master of the Beast Hall had truly gone all out this time. While they were discussing this matter, Hall Master Han took in a deep breath and stepped forward. Brother Demon Sank, I've prepared the items I told you about already. They are right here, come out and take a look. The voice echoed into the cave. There was a moment of silence, and the atmosphere grew tenser by the moment. Just as everyone was about to reach their limit, a loud gust of the wind blew out from within and a gigantic figure flew out. It was a massive spirit beast possessing a height of around 7 to 8 meters. When its wings were spread apart, its length reached more than 30 meters long. Its eyes were scarlet as though fresh blood, giving it a fearsome appearance. At the same time, its body is filled with resilient-looking scales, reflecting its outstanding defensive capability. The transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle aerial spirit beast that everyone within the Myriad Kingdom Alliance feared, the demon Sank. Roar. As though having comprehended the words of Hall Master Han, the massive savage beast looked at the deer-horde beast corpse placed in front of him with fiery eyes. Spirit beasts were already capable of absorbing spiritual energy to cultivate, and they possessed intelligence not beneath that of a human. The corpse of this deer-horde beast was producing the deep fragrance of herbs and an intense spiritual energy disturbance. At this moment, its instincts were telling it that if it were to consume it, its cultivation would surely soar. Even if it wasn't able to reach transcendent Mrotal 5-dan, it wouldn't be too far from it then. Under such circumstances, how could it not feel agitated? Brother Demon Sank, as long as you promise to a condition of mine, this deer-horde beast will be yours. Seeing that its interest was piqued, Hall Master Han chuckled lightly. Roar. The demon Sank beast turned its head to Hall Master Han, as though indicating its willingness to listen to the conditions of the latter. For the past 3 years, Brother Demon Sank and I have been spending much time together, and I believe you should now have a clear understanding of what kind of person I am. My condition is simple. I hope that you can become my tamed beast. Hall Master Han said. Don't worry, we can sign an equal contract. This way, I won't be able to force you to do anything you are reluctant to. Roa. Hearing that it had to become a tamed beast, the demon Sank beast's face immediately warped in savagery and it roared in displeasure. It emanated a deep aura of hostility that left one's hair standing on ends. It seemed to be saying that if Hall Master Han dared to continue talking about the matter, it would surely make a move. As a bearer of the dragon bloodline, it was of esteemed standing. How could it possibly be willing to submit to a mere human and serve as its lackey? You shouldn't be in such a hurry to make your decision. Seeing how the other party refused him without the slightest hesitation, Hall Master Han's complexion turned awful. However, he quickly veiled it and chuckled, I believe you should know of my standing among the humans. I am the head of the Beast Hall, a figure respected by many. Brother Demon Sank, as long as you follow me, I will treat you as my peer and fulfill anything you ask of to the best of my ability. The lifespan of spirit beasts might be long, but how long does it take for you to raise your cultivation by absorbing spiritual energy from the surroundings? You will be entitled to much better resources if you were to follow me. After finishing those words, Hall Master Han beckoned to the elders behind. A few elders stepped forward and a bunch of spirit stones appeared on the floor. They were all low-tier spirit stones, but they stacked up into a mini mountain. There was at least several thousand of them, and their appearance immediately caused the spiritual energy in the surroundings to surge. Just by taking a whiff, one could feel their pores opening up and an indescribable feeling of comfort would envelop one. Humans weren't the only one who could utilize spirit stones for their cultivation. Spirit beasts were the same as well. Cultivating through absorbing spiritual energy from spirit stones would surely be much faster than simply absorbing spiritual energy from the surroundings. There's a total of 8,000 spirit stones here. As long as you agree to the condition, I can give them all to you right now, Hall Master Han said. The reason why he could take out so many spirit stones while Hall Master Sai wasn't able to was not because the latter was poor. Rather, Hall Master Sai had spent the bulk of his money on collectibles, resulting in the amount of spirit stones he could take out at a moment to be severely limited. In terms of total assets, the latter would surely be far superior. It was just like those antique collectors in the world Zhongxian lived in prior to his transcension. If those collectors were to sell their entire collection, they would surely be drowning in cash. However, as finding a suitable buyer for these items were difficult, the amount of cash they could take out at a given time might not compare up to some of the wealthier merchants. If you aren't interested in these spirit stones, you might be interested in this. Seeing the lack of response from the demon sank beast after taking out the bunch of spirit stones, Hall Master Han hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. Flicking his wrist, he took out a jade box. Slowly opening it, a spirit stone came into sight. Boom! The moment the box was opened, the spiritual energy in the surroundings immediately grew so dense that it was nearly tangible. It felt as though as long as one was holding onto the spirit stone, even if one didn't attempt to absorb it, the spiritual energy would still seep into one's body, enhancing one's body. To put it simply, if one were to place this spirit stone by the side of an infant, even if the latter didn't cultivate, nourished by the spiritual energy contained within it, his body would become incredibly powerful and it would be immune to common illnesses. In less than 2 months, its physical body would become no weaker than that of a Pigu realm cultivator. Could this be a middle-tier spirit stone? Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly in agitation. Having read innumerable books, he knew a thing about 2 on the various tiers of spirit stones. The spirit stones in his possession at the moment were of the most inferior grade, low-tier spirit stones. Low-tier spirit stones were sufficient to support the cultivation of a cultivator of transcendent mortal 4 Dan and below. Any higher than that would require spirit stones of higher grade. Taking Zhongxian for example, due to the incredible purity of Heaven's Path Shanqi, even though he was only at transcendent mortal 1 Dan prolonged longevity realm pinnacle, low-tier spirit stones were already nearly ineffective on his cultivation. If he wanted to reach origin energy realm, on top of completing the Heaven's Path divine art of that level, more importantly, he needed a middle-tier spirit stone. That spirit stone in Hall Master Han's hand was more than sufficient for his cultivation to rise from prolonged longevity realm pinnacle to origin energy realm pinnacle. While quantity could make up for the disparity in quality, this logic only applied if the disparity in quality wasn't too great in the first place. With sufficient straw, one might be able to buy a diamond. However, the properties of a straw could never achieve the properties of a diamond. Thus, even though 10,000 low-tier spirit stones could be exchanged for a middle-tier spirit stone, it couldn't replace the effectiveness of a single middle-tier spirit stone. That's right, it is a middle-tier spirit stone. Not expecting his old buddy to take out such an invaluable object, Hall Master Sai's eyes widened in shock. Middle-tier spirit stones were incomparably expensive. There wasn't more than a handful of it throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The value of it could only be greater than the deer horde beast. Raw. Seeing the middle-tier spirit stone, the eyes of the demon sank beast grew even redder. In truth, Hall Master Han's heart was also bleeding from taking out his greatest treasure. However, he knew that it would be impossible to hook in the demon sank beast without this much. Thus, clenching his jaws, he continued, as long as Brother Demon Sank agrees to becoming my tamed beast, this middle-tier spirit stone will be yours. Chem. Brother Demon Sank, what are you intending to do? Before he could finish his words, the demon-sank beast flapped in massive wings and charged forward. Its talons swooped forward swiftly amidst raging winds to grab the spirit stone in Hall Master Han's hand. Snatching. The heck? Chapter 495. Fearmongering Hall Master Han felt dismal. Over the past 3 years, regardless of what the other party wished for, he had definitely given his all to procuring it just to please the other party. All he wished was to earn the other party's gratitude so that the other party would consider their relationship when he tried to tame it. Yet, this fellow forgot about their relationship as soon as a treasure appeared, and even went to the extent of snatching it. The heck? Could he be any greedier than this? If only he knew that the other party was so ungrateful, he would have never gone through so much trouble. Activate the formation. Judging from how the other party was ferociously charging at him, it probably didn't have any intention of stopping until it laid its claws on the middle-tier spirit stone. Knowing that this wasn't the time to get depressed, Hall Master Han bellowed. Since the carrot didn't work, he could only utilize his final resort, forcing the other party to submit through violence. This was the least preferable method due to the overwhelming strength of the demon-sank beast. Even though the beast Hall had the numerical advantage, capturing it alive was a terribly difficult task. If not for such, Hall Master Han wouldn't have wasted his 3 years pleasing the other party. While he was confident that he could convince the other party to submit through 3 years of relationship and the allure of profits, he still made preparations for the worst possible scenario. He had set up a formation here in advance in case something went wrong. To think that he would really end up using it. Yes. Nodding their heads, the elders dashed off in 4 different directions, and driving the zhenqi in their body to the maximum, they grabbed at the air before them. Boom! At a distance several hundred meters in front of the crowd, a mist slowly drifted into appearance, catching the demon-sank beast off guard. In its short moment of hesitation, the mist completely surrounded it. It's a confinement formation. Having learned the Heaven's Path formation art, even without utilizing the library of Heaven's Path, Zhongxian's comprehension of formations was comparable to a 4-star pinnacle formation master. Iron Chain Confinement Formation. Recognizing it, Jin Songhai's eyes narrowed. That's right. Zhongxian nodded in agreement. Iron Chain Confinement Formation was a formation created by a 4-star pinnacle formation master more than 1,000 years ago. It made use of the violent spiritual energy in the natural surroundings to form overlapping iron chains that bound life forms trapped within its area of effect. Even struggling free of the chains was a huge hurdle, needless to say, escaping from the formation. A Grade 4 pinnacle confinement formation. Staring at the impressive formation before him, Zhongxian remarked, "It seems like Hall Master Han is truly determined to capture this fellow." A formation of this level couldn't be set up on a whim. A formation master had to study the geographical terrain in advance to determine the various hiding spots for the formation flag. Afterward, he had to hide the formation flags underground without leaving the slightest trace so as to not incur the suspicion of the demon-sank beast. Even for a 4-star pinnacle formation master, it was impossible to achieve this without several months of preparation. Indeed. If I'm not mistaken, in the past 3 years, on top of pleasing this large fellow, he has made a lot of various preparations beneath the surface as well. Hall Master Sai smiled bitterly. Given the duration of time required to set up the formation and that the assistance of a 4-star pinnacle formation master was required, it seemed like his old buddy was determined to make this operation a success. It was probably after he suffered a setback 3 years ago that he thought of this idea. On the surface, he did his best to please the demon-sank beast, but in the shadows, he secretly hired others to set up this formation in case things didn't go as planned. Zhongxian shrugged. It's perfectly normal for him to do this. A beast tamer must always consider the possibility of failure. If he couldn't do this much, he couldn't have possibly become a 4-star beast tamer. Not even high-rank beast tamers could guarantee their taming to be successful every single time, especially when dealing with a ferocious and proud spirit beast. Hall Master Han had already failed once. If he were to confront the demon-sank beast without sufficient preparation in hopes of taming it, he wouldn't be worthy of his position as the head of the Beast Hall, a 4-star pinnacle beast tamer. Roar. While the group was chatting, The trapped demon sank beast realized that he had fallen for the other party's ploy, and it howled furiously. It went on a rampage, and destructive force shook the surroundings. "It's futile," Hall Master Han harumphed as he walked forward. With a flick of his wrist, a screen appeared in front of his crowd, reflecting the current circumstance of the demon sank beast. At Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan, its Junchi had already evolved into origin energy, allowing it to utilize unimaginable means. This screen was similar to the wall in the corridor housing the Sea of Formations in the Formation Master Guild, allowing one to clearly view the situation within the formation, as well as serving as a platform to communicate with the prisoner inside. The thick chains created through immense quantity of spiritual energy locked the demon sank beast firmly in place. The feared demon sank beast thrashed around violently, trying to free itself from its confines, but to no avail. "I've already told you, it's futile. I advise you not to waste your strength." Hearing its frenzied howl, Hall Master Han chuckled lightly. Roar. Hearing those words, the rage of the demon sank beast crescendoed. 3 years of fellowship had made it lower its wariness toward the other party. Otherwise, how could it possibly overlook a formation that was set up at the entrance of its nest? It didn't expect this to put it into a perilous situation. Resentment gushed through its mind like a huge torrent, and if looks could kill, Hall Master Han would have been torn into countless shreds by now. This is a grade 4 pinnacle formation. You might be powerful, but it'll be impossible for you to escape without knowing the correct method. Why don't we continue our previous conversation? As long as you promise to become my tamed beast, everything I've promised you before still holds. If not, I believe you should be more than aware of your current circumstances. It might be a pity to kill you, but you're no use to me otherwise, Hall Master Han said. In truth, he didn't want to come to this step. Even if he were to successfully tame the demon sank beast after this, it would be impossible for him to win the heart of the latter. That would be equivalent to a potential threat hanging over his neck. But the other party simply refused to submit to him, even going to the extent of snatching his item. Left with no choice, he could only resort to this. Roar. Seething with anger, the demon sank beast glared at Hall Master Han with its massive eyes. "You need not give me your answer so quickly. I have the time to wait for you." Seeing its attitude, Hall Master Han shook his head. Even so, he wasn't anxious in the least. Since the other party was already trapped, at the very most, he just had to expend more spirit stones to sustain the formation. No matter what, Hall Master Han was determined to tame the other party. Even though he had threatened to kill the other party, that was more of a mean to coerce the other party into submission. After all, once the other party was killed, his 3 years of effort would have gone in vain. Infuriated, the demon sank beast struggled. However, it wasn't able to struggle free of the iron chains which bound it tightly. Eventually, realizing that it couldn't free itself of its confines like that, it lay down and slowly closed his eyes. "Hall Master, what do we do?" Seeing that the huge fellow had calmed down instead, the other elders stared at one another in confusion before walking up to Hall Master Han. "What else can we do other than wait? Elder Hu, take out the deer horse beast and roast it. Make sure that the aroma reaches the demon sank beast. I don't believe that gluttonous fellow can hold himself back when such delicacy is placed before him," Hall Master Han said. Even when raw, the deer horde beast carried the deep aroma of herbs. Roasting it would surely whet one's appetite. As an embodiment of gluttony, it would be a wonder if the demon sank beast could hold itself back. Honestly speaking, Hall Master Han's mastery in the art of beast taming was truly formidable. The aroma of the deer horde beast was a clear contrast of the demon sank beast's current plight and the other possibility if it were to give in. This would surely gnaw at the other party's determination, luring it into submission. An ordinary spirit beast would have surely given in at this point. Yes. Elder Hu nodded. Just as he was about to start the fire to roast the deer horde beast, the 2-star beast tamer from before shook his head with a helpless look and said impassively, "I advise you not to roast the deer horde beast." Elder Hu frowned. Why? Not expecting that a mere 2-star beast tamer would interfere in their affairs, Hall Master Han and the other elders stared at one another as displeasure appeared on their faces. Even the least capable of them was a 4-star primary beast tamer, and it was common consensus that roasting the deer-horde beast was the best course of action at the moment. Otherwise, there would be nothing they could do. Yet, a 2-star beast tamer was dared to refute their decision. Nothing much, I just fear that the situation might evolve beyond your control if you were to roast it. Shaking his head, Zhongxian decided to say no more. Even though he was a master teacher, he wasn't a Samaritan. There was no need for him to interfere in everything. Besides, the other party seemed to be looking down on him. It's just the roasting of a deer-horde beast, what kind of situation could happen from it? Seeing how the young lad wasn't able to back up his claim, Elder Hu harumphed coldly. Did he really take all of them 4-star beast tamers as fools? If catastrophe could really come from this, they would have long noticed it already before a mere 2-star beast tamer could. Forget it if you aren't willing to listen, Zhongxian sighed. He had done his part already. Since the other party was reluctant to listen, he wasn't willing to speak any further as well. Humph, seems like you're just a fear-mongering, arrogant brat. Elder Hu flung his sleeves. The others also didn't seem too pleased by Zhongxian's comment. This was especially so for Hall Master Han. If not in consideration that the other party was Hall Master Sai's friend, he would have surely lashed out already. What did a mere 2-star beast tamer know to dare to speak up on their affairs? How boorish. Enough, go and roast the deer-horde beast. With a cold expression, Hall Master Han waved his hands. Initially, he still held some considerations over the other party given how Hall Master Sai addressed the other party as his friend. However, from the looks of it now, he was just a rude liar. The situation might evolve beyond control. It was just the roasting of a deer-horde beast, what could happen? Other than testing a person's tolerance, what else could possibly happen? Yes. Nodding his head, Elder Hu, along with some of elders, stacked up some firewood and started roasting the deer-horde beast. As beast tamers, they often had to camp in the wilderness for many days to lay in wait for a savage beast. Thus, it was inevitable that they would pick up such basic survival skills. Hoo. Soon, the campfire was lit and the deer-horde beast was placed on top. Tzzzzzzzz, sizzling sound echoed as a deep aroma began wafting in the area. Roasting the deer-horde beast, which had lived by feeding off spirit herbs, further brought out the fragrance hidden in its body. The roasting had just barely begun, but the crowd was already salivating. Let's retreat. Catching a whiff of the fragrance, Zhongxian shook his head. Retreat. Hall Master Sai and the others were taken aback. We should be at least several hundred meters away or else we might be implicated as well. Saying so nonchalantly, Zhongxian took the lead and retreated away from the deer-horde beast. As soon as he walked away, Zhao Ya, Zhao Feiwu, and the others hurriedly followed along. Hall Master Sai was put in a position, but after hesitating for a moment, he chose to tag along as well. These fellows. Seeing how the group turned around and left, saying that they might be implicated, bulging veins appeared on Hall Master Han's forehead, and he nearly erupted. Failing to tame that huge fellow had already filled him with rage, and the depressing words of this fellow were threatening to ignite his rage. You are just a 2-star beast tamer. To act as though an unfathomable expert with that deep expression of yours. Why don't you just become an actor? Chapter 496. Bizarre happenings. Truthfully, if it had been any other 2-star beast tamer that said such words, Hall Master Han surely wouldn't have gotten angry. What triggered him was the expression of that fellow who spoke. The other party acted as though he would surely suffer if he didn't heed his words. Not to mention, the contempt in his eyes couldn't be any more apparent. To think that a 4-star pinnacle beast tamer like him would be looked in contempt by a young lad. Contempt your head. This demon-sank beast possesses the dragon bloodline, resulting in its proud nature. It's normal to be unable to tame it. Do you really think that I wish to go this far? It's precisely because there's no better solution that I'm doing this. Me. Conceited. It sure is a wonder why Hall Master Sai would become friends with someone like you. Don't bother about them, focus on the roasting instead. The more aromatic it is, the better. Suppressing his rage, Hall Master Han instructed. Yes. Elder Hu and the others nodded, and they increased the intensity of the flame. The aroma of the deer-horde beast immediately grew deeper, inducing groans of protest from one's stomach. While that group was about to erupt from rage, Zhongxian and the others stopped at a distance several hundred meters away. "This will do." Zhongxian waved his hands. "Zhongshe." The crowd turned to look at him with questioning gazes. They had absolute trust in Zhongshe's capability. Since he had said that something was going to happen, there was a high chance that something would happen. Is Zhongshe worried about a stampede occurring? A thought flashed past Hallmaster Sai's mind and he frowned. Given how the aroma of the deer-horde beast is diffusing in the surroundings and considering the irresistible appeal of it to the spirit beasts, it is highly likely that a large group of spirit beasts might be attracted into the area. But if a stampede is going to occur, won't we still be caught in it at this distance? Under the charge of thousands and thousands of savage beasts, all life forms would be torn to shreds. If a stampede were to really occur, even if they were to escape several dozen kilometers away, they would still be caught within it. That seems possible. Everyone also came to a realization. What Hallmaster Sai said made sense. There was indeed a high probability of a stampede occurring. Such a matter had occurred in Coke's Ridge before, so this wasn't an unfounded worry. Given the aroma from the deer-horde beast, it wouldn't be surprising if spirit beasts were lured in. But if it was such a situation, shouldn't they run away as far as possible? Wouldn't it be courting death if they chose to remain here? A stampede? You sure have wild imaginations. Hearing those words, Zhongxian was speechless. Since even you all can tell that other spirit beasts could be lured in by the aroma of the deer-horde beast, do you all think that a group of 4-star beast tamers would neglect this possibility? The crowd's faces immediately turned red. That was indeed true. Since even outsiders like them could tell that much, how could 4-star beast tamer veterans neglect such a possibility? Since the other party could even foresee the rejection of the demon-sank beast and prepared countermeasures in advance, they must be prepared for the possibility of a stampede occurring already. Don't worry, such a thing can't possibly happen. Zhongxian shook his head. Why? Zhao Feiwu was bewildered. Even humans like them found it hard to hold themselves back before the allure of the deer-horde beast. How could spirit beasts possibly resist it? Seeing how the usually astute Gongzi asked such an obvious question, Zhongxian rolled his eyes. Even though the deer-horde beast is very aromatic, how far do you think the smell can diffuse to? Zhao Feiwu was immediately stumped. There was no doubt about the allure of the meat, but at their current distance, the aroma was already barely discernible. If they were to go any further, it would be completely undetectable already. Even though spirit beasts possessed far stronger senses of smell than humans, it would still be impossible for them to discern a smell several kilometers away. Besides, where do you think we are? We are on the territory of the demon-sank beast. Even if other spirit beasts were to catch a whiff of the aroma, do you think that they would dare to gather here? Zhongxian continued. Zhao Feiwu blushed in embarrassment. Powerful spirit beasts and savage beasts demarcated their own territories, and weaker beasts wouldn't dare to step into their boundaries. After all, the moment they stepped past the boundary, there was a high chance they would be killed as a prey. The demon-sank beast could be considered as the strongest spirit beast throughout the entire Ninefolds Mountain. Given the duration it had lived here, how could there be any nearby beasts who still dared to trespass on its territory? Wasn't that courting death? If I'm not mistaken, in a 10-kilometer radius where the demon-sank beast lives, there won't be any other spirit beasts. No matter how aromatic the deer-horde beast is, it's impossible for it cause an uproar among spirit beasts beyond 10 kilometers away. Zhongxian explained. 10 kilometers? Only then did everyone finally came to a realization. Stopping 2 kilometers away, it was true that they hadn't spotted any spirit beasts along the way. Even though they had noticed a few footprints, they were sparse. Most probably, those belonged to spirit beasts who accidentally wandered into the area and fled hurriedly after smelling the demon-sank beast's scent. Otherwise, given that they were a large group, it was odd that not a single spirit beast had come forward to pester them. No matter how aromatic the deer-horde beast was, It was impossible for a spirit beast that was 10 kilometers away to smell it. And even if one did, would it dare to walk in here? This was the territory of the strongest spirit beast in the Ninefolds Mountain. It was no wonder why Hall Master Han had no fear. He probably already knew in advance that it was impossible for a stampede to occur. But if it isn't a stampede, what other situation could happen? Eventually, they returned back to the original question. Look on, you'll understand soon enough. Zhongxian didn't explain the matter. Since Zhongxian was unwilling to speak, the others didn't think that it was appropriate to question him further. At that point, Hall Master Sai suddenly requested awkwardly, if there's any danger, I beseech Zhongshe to save Hall Master Han. The only reason why he snubs you is because he doesn't know of your capability. In truth, he isn't a bad person. No matter what, Hall Master Han was his friend. He couldn't possibly watch on nonchalantly if the other party was in danger. Yuan, if something really happens, I'll help him. However, I just fear that they might not be happy if I do make a move. Chuckling softly, Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. All right, you all should continue watching. It should be about time. Hearing those words, the crowd turned their sights to the front. At this point, the cooking of the deer-horde beast was about to be finished. The aroma had already reached an unbearable level. These elders were all skilled in outdoor survival skills, and they had brought some seasoning along with them for this operation. Even though it was abrupt, their skills weren't inferior even to the top chefs of Honghai City. Not just the aroma and the taste, even the tone of the meat was perfect. Just the sight of it was enough to induce uncontrolled salivation in one. Brother Demon Sank, can you smell it? If you become my tamed beast, this will be yours. Besides, you only have to stay by my side, so there's nothing for you to lose. Once my lifespan reaches its end, you'll be free once more. What else is there to consider? Knowing that the aroma had already permeated through the entire formation, Hall Master Han continued, hurry up and make your decision or else, we'll be eating the deer-horde beast by ourselves. By then, it'll be too late. I believe that you should know the value of the deer-horde beast as well. This is the only one in the entire Ninefolds Mountain, and once you miss it, you'll surely regret it for life. Hall Master Han's words were indeed very persuasive. Any other spirit beast would have already been convinced by now. However, the eyes of the demon sank beast were still tightly shut, and it remained completely motionless. It seemed as though it was asleep. When did the demon sank beast become so docile? At this moment, Zhao Feiwu also realized that something was wrong. According to the legends passed down in the Mirade Kingdom Alliance, this fellow was ferocious and savage. Back then, someone had also tried to use a formation to trap it. However, it was a pity that the stamina of the demon sank beast seemed to know no limits. Soon, under its struggling, the spirit stones in the formation ran dry and it broke out of the formation. Formations could be sustained by both spiritual energy in the surroundings and spiritual energy from spirit stones. The former would require a long charging period for the formation to be sustained, whereas the latter only demanded sufficient spirit stones. But regardless which of the two it was, formations required an energy input to sustain it. To cope with the struggling of the prisoner, it would have to expend a greater amount of energy. Once the spirit stones ran dry, even if one didn't know the exact method to break the formation would still crumble by itself. This was precisely the reason why the corridor of the Formation Master Guild had a time limit of 2 hours. If not, as long as the examinee struggled, it would just be a matter of time before the energy in the formation ran dry. Breaking out of the formation under such circumstances wouldn't be a test of one's skill. Despite the ferocious nature of the demon sank beast before, it chose to lie down as though an obedient child. Even though it was interested in the deer-horde beast before, there wasn't any signs of it wanting to break out of the formation. This was contrary to its nature. Hallmaster, it's done. Just as everyone was puzzled, Elder Hu and the others were done cooking the deer-horde beast. The golden spirit beast meat and the deep aroma made it irresistible to all. Good, bring it over. Hallmaster Han nodded. Elder Hu and the others nodded as they brought the cooked deer-horde beast flesh over. Do you see that? If you were to hesitate any longer, we'll be digging in. Hall Master Han chuckled as he turned his gaze to the deer-horde beast. Just as he was about to pick it up to entice the other party, his eyes suddenly widened in astonishment and he erupted. What the heck is this? Who in the world ate it? Ate it? Everyone turned their sights over, only to see the previously intact deer-horde beast missing a limb. Only a trail of bones hung limply on the body. In other words, someone had secretly eaten one of the limbs. Hall Master Han was frenzied. Who in the world was the one who ate the deer-horde beast? Even though he kept saying that they were going to dig in, it was actually just a method to coax the demon-sank beast. If they were to really eat it, the possibility of taming it would drop to zero. In other words, he was just saying it was impossible for him to really do it. Why in the blink of an eye did a limb suddenly go missing? Not to mention, not the slightest piece of meat was left on the limb. Aren't you all going too far? Don't you all know how much effort I have put into taming this fellow? Hall Master Han glared coldly at Elder Hu and the others. Hall Master Sai and that infuriating 2-star beast tamer had left as soon as the roasting process started, so it was impossible for them to be the culprit. The only plausible suspects were the elders standing before him. Hall Master, we didn't do it. Being glared at by the other party, Elder Hu and the other leaped in shock. They hurriedly shook their hands in denial. They had been swallowing their saliva and suppressing their agitation while roasting it, not daring to nibble the slightest bit of it. They were also baffled by how a limb went missing all of a sudden. You didn't do it. Are you saying that the flesh flew away by itself? Hall Master Han lashed out. What kind of teammates did I find? I asked you all to roast the meat to entice the demon-sank beast into submission, and yet you all ended up feasting on it yourself. What is wrong with you all? Hall Master, it really isn't us. I can swear to that. Seeing that the Hall Master didn't believe them, Elder Hu raised his palm to vow to the heavens when he suddenly froze, and his expression slowly warped in shock. Hall Master. What's wrong? Hearing the sudden exclamation, Hall Master Han traced Elder Hu's gaze back to the deer-horde beast meat and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. The deer-horde beast, which was initially missing one limb, was missing two now. Staring at the bare bone hanging off its body, an air of eeriness floated in the area. Chapter 497, The Pummeled Hall Master Han. Who was it? Looking around, Hall Master Han raised his hands warily. At that moment, it was clear that it wasn't Elder Hu and the others who'd eaten the deer-horde beast. But other than them, who else could it be? Who in the world could eat the deer-horde beast without his notice? This was way too sinister. Hall Master, look. Elder Hu pointed. Lowering his head, Hall Master Han immediately realized what was going on. Unknowingly, a dense layer of golden worms had crawled onto the deer-horde beast. They were each around the size of an ant, and wherever they passed by, the meat would vanish, leaving behind only bones. Clearly, the two limbs were cleared away by these insects. These worms were extremely small, and their color resembled the tone of the roasted flesh. Thus, if one didn't pay close attention, it was easy to overlook them. What are those? Hall Master Han was taken aback. Despite being a 4-star beast tamer, he realized that he had never seen those worms before. Hall Master, could these be? Suddenly recalling something, Elder Hu's body froze and fear reflected in his eyes. You're saying that? Seeing the other party's expression, Hall Master Han froze for a moment before fear slowly crept onto his face. Yes. Otherwise, how could any creature consume the flesh of the deer-horde beast so quickly? Elder Hu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If it's really that thing, we could really be in trouble. Suddenly recalling something, Hall Master Han lifted his head and looked at the screen, only to see the eyes of the demon-sank beast wide opened, gleaming with energy. The edges of its gigantic lips suddenly curled up coldly. Zhongshe, what is that? Upon seeing that bizarre sight, Hall Master Sai couldn't help but ask. As the head of the appraiser hall, his knowledge pool was formidable, but even so, he had never heard of such a bizarre creature. The others also turned their gazes over. Zhongshe had predicted this would happen and brought them over. From the looks of it, this must be what he was worried about. They're soul-devouring ants, Zhongshen said with a grim expression. Soul-devouring ants? The crowd was bewildered. They had never heard of them before, needless to say, know what they were. However, as soon as Luo Zhu heard that name, his body immediately froze and disbelief surfaced on his face. Legend has it that these ants are the nemesis of soul oracles. They are beings who sustain themselves by consuming souls and spiritual energy. Soul-devouring ants were bizarre creatures who were capable of devouring soul and spiritual energy. As such, they were the nemesis of soul oracles. Why would such insects be found near the cave of the demon-sank beast? Instead of replying his words, Zhongxian turned his head over and asked, "If I'm not mistaken, the soul oracle tomb that you are talking of is located under the lake, am I right?" "You? How did you know?" Luo Zhu was taken aback. He had only said that the soul oracle tomb was in the vicinity. He had never revealed the exact location, so how in the world did the other party know about it? Tombs were all about geomancy, and being buried beneath a lake was commonly known to be inauspicious. No one in the right mind would choose to do so. Thus, if one were to tell another that there was a tomb underwater, one would definitely be mocked by others. Back then, when he looked up the relevant books and found its exact location, he was still in disbelief. This was the reason why he was so confident that no one could have found it. However, the person before him pointed out the matter in an instant. Could it be really related to these soul-devouring ants? Soul-devouring ants live by consuming souls, thus making them the nemesis of soul oracles. However, these things fear water, so the only way to avoid them and not be devoured by them is to be buried underwater, Zhongxian said. The books that Hall Master Sai gathered on soul oracles might not have had much useful knowledge, but it still provided some basic knowledge for Zhongxian to work with. Besides, soul-devouring ant was a type of spirit beast recorded in the books of the Beast Tamer Guild. After looking at the ground with his eye of insight, he had already noticed some peculiarities. With some deduction, he swiftly understood the situation. Isn't being buried underwater inauspicious for both the living and the dead? The one who asked the question wasn't Luo Zhu but Zhao Feiwu. Learning that the tomb was beneath the lake had left her astounded. She had spotted the lake as soon as she arrived in the area, and under the ceaseless torrent from the waterfall throughout the years, its current depth was unimaginable. To build one's tomb at the bottom of it, wouldn't one be afraid of one's resting place being washed away by the water, unable to rest in peace even after death? To the soul oracles, they could always possess another physical body to come alive again. Death was nothing more than a temporary sleep to them, and geomancy and the like didn't apply to them. Thus, it didn't matter where they built their tomb, Zhongxian explained. Oh. The crowd came to a realization. The main reason why tombs were placed at a location viewed to be auspicious was in hopes that they could bring luck to their future offspring. However, soul oracles didn't think that death was permanent to them, and thus, it didn't matter to them where their tomb was located. But that's not right. After a moment of hesitation, Luo Zhu suddenly recalled something and said, even though the soul oracle tomb is located beneath the lake, it isn't submerged in water at all. Thus, even if the soul-devouring ants are unable to step into the water, they should be able to enter the tomb by burrowing their way into it. Then why? If the soul oracle tomb were submerged in water, he wouldn't have been able to explore it, and wouldn't have been possessed by a soul within the tomb. That day, when he entered the underground tomb, even though it had been sealed for innumerable years, the air was dry and permitted one to breathe. Since even humans could enter the tomb, soul-devouring ants would surely be able to do the same as well. If that was the case, how could the soul have survived there for so many years? If I'm not mistaken, you are the one who brought all of these soul-devouring ants over, Zhongxian said. Me? Luo Zhu was taken aback. Even though he had heard of soul-devouring ants, he had never met one in his life before. How could he possibly be the one who brought them over? The soul oracle tomb is tightly sealed. For innumerable years, it remained secluded from the outside world. However, not only did you open the tomb, you even came out with a soul on you. Naturally, the scent of the souls leaked out. As such, these fellows who specially prey on souls were attracted here. However, due to the limited time of their arrival, they haven't found the entrance yet. If we had delayed for another month, then even if we were to enter, we surely wouldn't be able to find anything at all, Zhongxian said with a grim expression. Soul-devouring ants were the nemesis of the soul oracles, so naturally, soul oracles learned how to guard against them. They knew how to prevent the scent of their souls from leaking out and prevent bringing attention upon themselves. However, Luo Zhu didn't. If Zhongxian wasn't mistaken, these soul-devouring ants had probably arrived not too long ago. Otherwise, they would have already burrowed beneath the deep lake instead of loitering around the surface and wouldn't have been attracted by the aroma of the deer-horde beast. This. Luo Zhu's face paled. He was actually the one who brought those fearsome things here. Just the thought of it sent shivers down his spine. Recovering from his shock, Luo Zhu suddenly thought of something and asked doubtfully, even though soul-devouring ants favor consuming soul and the meat of the deer-horde beast, there shouldn't have needed to escape so far, right? Under normal circumstances, those ants won't harm humans, right? Soul-devouring ants were bizarre and abhorrent creatures, and they were the nemesis of the soul oracles. However, to ordinary humans, they were completely harmless. Was there a need for them to escape several hundred meters away? You're right in that the soul-devouring ants won't do any harm to us. However, you mustn't forget that on top of consuming souls, these insects consume spiritual energy as well, and what a formation primarily drives on is precisely spiritual energy, Zhongxian explained. Formation? Taken aback, everyone was stunned for a moment before their eyes slowly narrowed. They hurriedly turned their gazes over. Damn it! Seeing the opened eyes of the demon-sank beast, Hall Master Han also realized that something was amiss and his body tensed up. Given that the soul-devouring ant was hidden underground, even though he was a beast tamer, it wasn't too surprising for him to have failed to notice it. However, the demon-sank beast was different. Spirit beasts were exceptionally sensitive to their surroundings, not to mention, this was its nest. Thus, how could it possibly be unaware of the arrival of these guests? It seemed like it knew that those guests would be attracted by the scent of the deer-horde beast, and knowing their ability to consume spiritual energy, it was without fear. That was why it chose to close its eyes, lie low, and wait. The moment the spiritual energy of the formation had been completely consumed by those soul-devouring ants, the formation would be like a carriage without a steed. Without a driving force, how could it possibly operate? Upon thinking of all this, Hall Master Han hurriedly instructed, increase the energy and reinforce the formation. However, before he could finish his words, a furious howl echoed. The trapped demon-sank beast suddenly moved, causing the ground to tremor. Voila! The spiritual energy chains locking it, as though having been nibbled on by something, broke apart in an instant. After which, an incomparably powerful aura gushed out from the body of the spirit beast. Both its wings flapped furiously and it flew out of the formation, the formation collapsed entirely, and the mist shielding everyone's view disappeared. Following which, everyone saw the massive body of the demon-sank beast charging straight toward Elder Hu and the others. Roar! A furious bellow. Flapping its wings, huge gusts of wind were whipped up. What? Before Elder Hu and the others could react, they were already struck and sent flying. Blood spewed from their mouths in midair. A transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle spirit beast was typically already stronger than human cultivators of the same level. On top of that, it was just captured and forced to submit. All of the resentment accumulated in its heart caused it to go into a rampaging state. How could the elders of the Beast Hall withstand against such might? In just a single move, all of them were already injured. Damn it! Not expecting this fellow to be so callous, disregarding their 3 years of relationship, Hall Master Han's face steeled. Raising his hand, a long spear appeared in his grip. Even though he was a beast tamer, his fighting prowess as an individual was formidable as well. He had already reached transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle as well. As soon as the spear left his hand, it immediately charged forward as though a mighty dragon, headed straight for the demon-sank beast. Facing the offense, the demon-sank beast didn't even bother to dodge. He simply faced it straight with his physical body. Ding ding. The incomparably sharp spear came into contact with the demon-sank beast's chest, but it failed to even pierce through the latter's skin. Needless to say, it was unable to injure the beast. What formidable defense! Zhong Xian, Hall Master Sai, and the others stared at one another with widened eyes. They knew that the spirit beast's dragon bloodline had granted it unparalleled defense among its peers, and ordinary weapons couldn't hope to overcome it. Even so, that was an attack which Hall Master Han had placed his full might into. It was a shocking sight to see that it didn't even leave the slightest mark. It was no wonder why its notoriety would be known throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom alliance, and why the multiple attempts of the royal family in eliminating it ended up in failure. It was indeed a force to reckon with. Roar! After deflecting the spear with its chest, the demon-sank beast roared furiously. Its powerful voice enveloped the area with rampaging might reminiscent of a storm. At the forefront, Hall Master Han bore the brunt of the attack. Despite being a transcendent mortal Dan pinnacle, he still felt a little faint-headed and nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. Hoo-la! After the roar, the demon-sank beast swept its massive wings. A cloud of dust immediately rose into the air, and a massive tear appeared on the ground. Hall Master Han swiftly summoned its spear back to protect himself. Even so, the disparity in the strength of both parties was too great. With a numbing sensation in his arm, he was sent flying as though a ball being kicked into the distance. Pu. Even in midair, blood kept gushing out of his mouth, causing his face turn ghastly pale. With his internals rattled by the overwhelming force that struck him, Hall Master Han felt as though his body was tearing apart. At this very moment, a thought suddenly emerged in his mind. Did the two-star beast tamer predict that this would happen? Chapter 498. Despairing Hall Master Han, the two-star beast tamer, had advised him against roasting the deer-horde beast, and thinking that it was impossible, he refused to listen to the other party's advice. As such, the other party left along with his group for fear of being implicated in the trouble. Initially, he thought that the fellow was just fear-mongering, but to think that trouble really occurred out of it. Could it be that he had actually predicted the appearance of the soul-devouring ants, the collapse of the formation, and the current, disastrous situation? That's impossible. Soul-devouring ants are extremely rare spirit beasts. Even I was unable make the link out of the blue. How can such a young two-star beast tamer possibly have foreseen this? Even though he knew that it likely was the truth, he still found the entire matter too hard to believe. In ancient times, soul-devouring ants were the nemesis of the soul oracles. But ever since that era had passed, the entire species had disappeared from sight for a very long time. As such, very few people knew about their natural habitat, characteristics, and such. How could such a young beast tamer possibly discern so much within a few short minutes? Even five-star beast tamers didn't possess such means. This thought disappeared as soon as it appeared in his mind. Even if he wished to pursue the matter, the current circumstance didn't allow for it. Landing on the ground, he suppressed the stifled sensation in his chest and straightened his back. Then, flicking his spear in his hands, he looked at the massive savage beast and said, "Brother Demon Sank, no matter what, we have been together for 3 years. You should understand my character very well. I have no intentions of hurting you at all. How about this? Why don't we just forget about this matter? Let's continue to get along as equal peers." "Why you? Stop. Why are you still charging here?" Before he could finish his words, the massive figure appeared right before him once more. Raising its claws, it struck down on him. Peng! Blocking it with his spear, Hall Master Han was knocked backward once more. Even though they were both at transcendent mortal Dan pinnacle, there was an irreconcilable disparity in their strength. He wasn't a match for the other party at all. "Don't force me. Did you think that the formation was my only trump card?" Shit. Having been attacked relentlessly by the other party, Hall Master Han's chest ached from the heavy blows directed at him. Infuriated, he lashed out. However, before he could finish his lashing, he was struck once more by the wing of the demon-sank beast. He was sent rotating several rounds in the air before crashing heavily down. At this moment, Hall Master Han felt extremely dismal. If only he'd known that the roasting of the deer-horde beast would attract the soul-devouring ants and destroy the formation, he would have never done so. In the end, not only did the deer-horde beast become a gift to the soul-devouring ants, the target he was aiming to tame was also in a berserk state. It seemed as though the other party would never rest as long as he was still breathing. He snuck a glance at the two-star beast tamer, Hall Master Sai, and the others, and this single glance nearly caused another mouthful of blood to spurt from his mouth. At a distance several hundred meters away, the young man from before was looking at him leisurely as he lectured his students. Do you all see that? This is the consequence of not listening to the advice of others. In the future, when you all explore the world by your own, make sure to remain humble and keep an open mind to the words of others. In any case, just don't be like him. Also, even though that previous move of his looked incredible, it's actually a complete failure. If he had launched that attack half a breath earlier, the demon-sank beast's movements would surely have been interrupted. To be able to use perfectly fine moves to such an extent, his fighting techniques are truly mediocre. Thus, you all must train your battle techniques diligently. Don't always think about conquering this and that. Rather than wasting your time on such immaterial accomplishments, you should work hard on raising your fighting prowess. The young man commented as he lectured his students. Hearing those words, Hall Master Han's eyebrows leaped furiously. If he could, he would have charged forward to pummel that young man. The heck? I am a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle expert, the head of the Beast Hall. Why, in the view of an insignificant figure like you, did I suddenly become a person incapable of anything at all? But what left him even more frustrated was that, analyzing the other party's words carefully, he realized that the other party's words were actually spot on. Even if he wanted to refute those words, he had no idea where he could start from. There is something bizarre about that fellow. When I'm done dealing with the demon-sank beast, I will have to ask Hall Master Sai about it. No matter how foolish he was, it was clear that the young man was extraordinary. Most probably, he must have noticed something in advance, that's why he spoke those words. However, this wasn't the time to be conflicted over this matter. Twisting his body, he dodged the demon-sank beast's offense and raised his head. Brother demon-sank, since you refuse to agree to my offer of reconciliation, don't blame me for getting nasty. After which, he took a breath and flicked his hands. While he was being continuously forced back by the demon-sank beast, Elder Hu and the others had been making preparations. Even though they had been knocked away by the demon-sank beast, those were mainly superficial injuries. A moment of meditation was more than sufficient to get them back to their full strength. Upon hearing those words, they immediately got into position and drew their weapons. Voila! Their aura harmonized together as one, forming a collaborative offense formation. It's the same formation as the one the younger beast tamers used previously. However, this one is much more profound and stronger. From afar, Zhongxian couldn't help but nod his head. It was a rare opportunity to view the battle among transcendent mortal 4-dan experts. Naturally, he should explain the entire battle to Zhao Ya and the others so that they could learn from it and improve. Indeed, this formation further augments their individual strength, allowing their battle prowess to soar several-fold. Jin Tsonghai nodded. Even when crossing hands with the younger beast tamers outside, if not for his experience and superior cultivation, it would definitely be difficult for him to triumph over them. Since even the juniors were already so powerful, not much had to be said about the seniors who had immersed themselves into the formation for such a long period of time. Not to mention, their cultivation realms were also far superior, resulting in a vast difference in the might of both formations. If they were the ones whom we were facing previously, even if there were 8 of us facing them, we still wouldn't have had the strength to retaliate at all. Taking a glance, Hall Master Sai couldn't help but remark. The reason why the both of them could suppress the formation of the young beast tamers previously wasn't because the formation was weak but because their cultivation far exceeded that of the other party. On top of that, the young beast tamers weren't familiar with the collaborative offensive formation either. But Hall Master Han, Elder Hu, and the others didn't have such a flaw at all. It was clear that they had practiced the formation for several years already, and every single move of theirs had a deep intention behind it. On top of that, their teamwork was exquisite, so as soon as the formation was executed, their fighting prowess immediately soared to formidable heights, thus exerting a huge pressure on the demon-sank beast. Awed, Hall Master Sai commented, "So, this is his true trump card. For the formation to be so powerful, it seems like they began practicing this collaborative formation straight after the failure 3 years ago. The confinement formation they used previously was formidable, but what if the other party was determined not to give in? Eventually, it would just be a matter of time before the formation ran out of power and the demon-sank beast was let loose. Thus, Hallmaster Sai was perplexed as to whether Hallmaster Han had any backup plan to deal with this situation. From the looks of it now, this seemed to be it. The collaborative formation made up of the several elders harnessed immense power, making them a match for even a transcendent mortal 5-dan primary stage expert. Dealing with a 4-dan pinnacle demon-sank beast shouldn't be much of a problem. Do you think that they can win? Seeing through Hallmaster Sai's thoughts, Zhongxian chuckled. Their teamwork is flawless, and the might of the formation is also formidable. They should be able to suppress the demon-sank beast entirely, Hallmaster Sai said. As a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert, he was able to gauge of the fighting prowess of these elders accurately. The collaborative offensive formation was profound and it augmented the strengths of every single individual in it. No matter how powerful the demon-sank beast, it would be hard for it to withstand the combined might of the group. Should be able to? Zhongxian shook his head. Since they have their trump card, what makes you think that the demon-sank beast doesn't have one? If a single collaborative offensive formation could bring it down, it would have been eliminated by the forces dispatched by the Myriad Kingdom Alliance long ago. Back then, even the many experts sent by the Myriad Kingdom Alliance ended in failure. To even entertain the thought that a single formation could subdue this demon-sank beast was a gross underestimation of its ability. Besides, this is in fact a slaughter formation. However, given that Hallmaster Han is reluctant to kill the demon-sank beast in hopes of taming it, his movements will be severely limited. This will prevent them from bringing out the full might of the formation. After studying the Heaven's Path formation art, Zhongxian's understanding of formations had reached an astounding level. Even though he didn't know the name of the collaborative offensive formation, he could accurately discern its properties and might. Hallmaster Han was too focused on taming the demon-sank beast, and this would cause him to subconsciously hold back in his offense. In other words, he was treating this slaughter formation as a confinement formation. With the might of the formation greatly reduced, it was just a matter of time before the group fell apart. And just like Zhongxian had said, initially, Hallmaster Han and the others had the upper hand. However, as the demon-sank beast gave up on its defense altogether and attacked recklessly, the formation was swiftly torn apart. Pu. A few minutes later, the elders were swept away by the wing of the demon-sank beast and incurred heavy injuries. They spat out huge mouthfuls of blood. Peng. Eventually, under one of the attacks from the demon-sank beast, Hallmaster Han's spear was knocked out of his hand, and he crashed onto the ground. Who? After breaking the formation, the furious demon-sank beast immediately stomped its massive foot on Hallmaster Han. If Hallmaster Han were to be really stepped on by that humongous figure, no matter how powerful he was, it would be difficult for him to escape from his demise. Seeing that his life was at risk, Hallmaster Han bore with the intense pain pricking at his body and got up. Summoning the strength he had into his palm, he prepared to receive the other party's blow. Peng. The foot came into contact with his palm, and for a moment, there was a stalemate. However, the pressure on the foot only grew stronger and stronger. Just as Hallmaster Han was coming to the verge of his endurance, and he thought that he would be reduced into meat paste, an anxious voice shouted, "Zhongsha, I beseech you to save Hallmaster Han." The one who spoke was Hallmaster Sai. After years of being friends, he couldn't bear seeing his old friend dying before him. However, he knew the extent of his ability well. He wasn't even a match for his old buddy, needless to say, this monster that could easily subdue him. Thus, the only option left was to request for Zhongsha's help. Zhongxian's cultivation was far beneath his, but after the past few days of interaction, he found himself being continuously shocked by the other party's miraculous means. Perhaps, he might have a solution to save his old buddy. I am not a match for the demon-sank beast either. How do you expect me to save him? However, contrary to his expectations, the young man gave a negative reply. Hearing those words, Hallmaster Han despaired. He thought that 3 years of fellowship and the various hands he had prepared beforehand would allow this operation to end in success. Never in his dreams did he expect for this fellow's strength to be far beyond his, resulting in a completely one-sided fight. Please, you must have a solution. Otherwise, if the demon-sank beast were to kill Hall Master Han, it'll definitely come for us next. Hall Master Sai pleaded anxiously. Oh, I do have a solution. The nonchalant voice of the young man sounded. What is it? Hall Master Sai asked in agitation. Hall Master Han's body also tightened. Seeing a ray of hope, he immediately pricked his ears to listen closer. Simple, we just have to ask this fellow to release him, the young man said. Pu. Having his ray of hope abruptly crushed, Hall Master Han spurted a mouthful of blood and fell into despair. Chapter 499, Taming the Demon-Sank Beast. Release him? Aren't you spouting the obvious? Who doesn't know that that is the most direct method? However, look at how furious this fellow is. It seems as though it is ready to murder anyone. Do you think that it's possible for it to release him? Trapping the other party and using a collaborative offensive formation, this had already created an irreconcilable grudge between the two. At this moment, the demon-sank beast couldn't wait to kill the latter to vent his resentment. Release? You must be joking. He thought that since this young man was able to predict the appearance of the soul-devouring ants, he might just be able to come up with a brilliant situation to save him. To think that he would be so unreliable as well. Asking for the demon-sank beast to release him would probably only hasten his death. Depressed, Hall Master Han gave up all hope. At that moment, he heard Hall Master Sai's voice sound. Release. What do you need? I'll go make preparations now. There's no need for any preparations. As long as I tame that fellow and make it my tamed beast, it will surely listen to my words, the young man said nonchalantly. Tame it and make it your tamed beast. Hall Master Han's vision went dark, and for a moment, it felt as though he had seen all wonders in life. Over the course of the past 3 years, the treasures which he had presented to the demon-sank beast could already make up a massive mountain. Not to mention, for this operation, he had used the deer-horde beast, middle-tier spirit stone, and various other treasures to entice it. Even so, the demon-sank beast didn't even consider accepting the offer in the least. How dare you speak as though taming it will be so easy? If it is that easy, do you think that I would be trampled beneath its foot at this very moment? Forget it, I shouldn't depend on this fellow. I should think of a way myself instead. Knowing that it wasn't a viable option to depend on this young man, Hall Master Han exerted his strength and attempted to push away the other party's foot. However, as soon as he exerted more strength, he felt the force weighing down him increasing proportionately as well. Boom! A huge shock wave rippled into the surroundings, and Hall Master Han was pushed deeper into the ground. A cloud of dust rose into the air, cloaking his face with dirt. Pu. Fresh blood spewed from his mouth once more. Under the immense force, his injuries worsened, and his consciousness was slowly getting hazy. To think that I would end up dying here. Desolation gripped his heart. Having engaged in beast taming his entire life, he thought that with his innumerable means, he would surely be able to turn this big fellow into his tamed beast. Never in his dreams did he expect that he would end up dying under the foot of the other party. Just the thought of it left him frustrated. Just as he was about to close his eyes and await his impending demise, he suddenly heard a sound that resembled both the call of a cow and the rumbling of thunder. Then, the immense force crushing down on him suddenly vanished. Touching his body, he affirmed that he was still alive and that the demon-sank beast, who was intent on crushing him into a lump of meat, had removed its foot. Baffled, he opened his eyes to take a look, and with a single glance, his entire body convulsed and he nearly fainted. This. His lips twitched intensely, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Hall Master Han seemed to have seen an inconceivable sight that was pushing the boundaries of his rationality. The arrogant demon-sank beast which was charging at him furiously to slaughter him so as to vent its resentment was currently lying obediently in front of a figure. Its head was closely aligned with the ground, and its thick tongue licked the other party's foot relentlessly. With a respectful expression, it fawned on the figure as though a loyal dog serving its owner. It was an indescribably crude sight. What was going on? Wasn't that fellow arrogant to the extreme, refusing to serve anyone even if it had spelled its death? Shouldn't nothing have been able to move it at all? Why, in the blink of an eye, did it suddenly start licking the shoes of another person? Besides, what is with your look of reverence? You are salivating, you know? You look as though you hate the fact that you don't have two tongues to lick both shoes of the other party at once. Can you at least retain some basic decency? Rubbing his eyes forcefully, Hall Master Han tried to confirm whether he was seeing things when the figure in front of the demon-sank beast pushed the face of the latter away impatiently. Go and chew on the grass by the side instead. Pu. Hall Master Han's body swayed from side to side. The demon-sank beast is treating you so respectfully, and yet, you still pushed it away? Not to mention, asking it to feed on grass? It's a carnivore. How can it possibly eat grass? But another shock awaited him. Without any hesitation, the demon-sank beast immediately rushed to the side excitedly, opened its mouth widely, and began chewing on the grass joyfully, as though afraid that someone might steal it from him. Pa. Thinking that he might be dreaming, Hall Master Han sent a forceful slap to his face. The intense pain helped him to sharpen his consciousness, and looking over once more, the demon-sank beast was still waging a war with the grass by the side. The hell? What on earth is going on? Clawing on his head frenziedly, Hall Master Han felt as though something had gone wrong with the world. He had caught a clear glimpse of the figure whom the demon-sank beast was fawning on. It was the two-star beast tamer who had advised him previously, Zhong Xian. After 3 years of effort, the demon-sank beast remained nonchalant to him, and even went to the extent of trying to kill him. Yet, this fellow only roared once, and the other party immediately licked his shoes and chewed on the grass by the side. Where has the fairness of the world gone to? Is the 4-star beast tamer me or you? Suddenly, an idea emerged in his head. Could this be the reason why Hall Master Sai is acting so politely around him? He had been perplexed over why Hall Master Sai would choose to treat this young man with utmost respect, and from the looks of it now, it seemed like this young man wasn't just a simple 2-star beast tamer. Otherwise, how could he possibly make the demon-sank beast lower its pride to such an extent and submit immediately with just a single howl? Adjusting his breathing, Hall Master Han bore with the pain and walked up to the young man. Thank you, beast tamer Zhong, for saving my life. If not for the other party taming the demon-sank beast, he would have surely died. No matter what, the other party had saved his life, and this made him indebted to him. Waving his hands casually, Zhong Xian said, I am only doing this because of Hall Master Sai's plea. If you must thank someone, thank Hall Master Sai. If not for Hall Master Sai, I wouldn't have even bothered. Still, it's only right for me to thank beast tamer Zhong. If not for your help, I would have surely been dead by now. After thanking Zhong Xian once more, Hall Master Han turned to Hall Master Sai and clasped his fist. Hall Master Sai, thank you. We've been buddies for so long, there's no need for you to stand on ceremonies. Hall Master Sai's face reddened. Besides, I'm of no help at all. Zhongsha managed to tame the demon-sank beast all by himself. Zhongsha. Even though he had heard this address before, he thought that he might have just heard wrongly. After all, he was in the midst of battle, and there was a considerable distance between them and him. However, it was impossible for him to be mistaken this time around. His heart immediately jolted. Could the young man before him be a master teacher? UN. Not only is Zhongsha a master teacher, he's also a 2-star beast tamer, 5-star appraiser, quasi 4-star formation master. Hall Master Sai explained. Master teacher, 5-star appraiser, and quasi 4-star formation master? Hall Master Han's face paled. He thought that the other party was just a 2-star beast tamer, that was why he took the other party lightly. How could he have known that the other party would have so many occupations? Putting everything aside, just his identity as a master teacher already made him of superior standing to him. Master teachers were not to be made light or sullied. Those who dared to do so would be beaten to death on the spot, and no one would dare to speak up for that person. Not to mention, the other party was a 5-star appraiser and quasi 4-star formation master on top of that. Of course, our young master isn't just limited to these occupations. He's also a physician, apothecary, and painter. Seeing that the other party was stumped, a plump man walked out from the back of the young man and harumphed. 7. Occupations. Hall Master Han swallowed a mouthful of saliva and his mouth started trembling. A person would have to spend much effort just to master one occupation. And yet, the person in front of him had already mastered 7. When did such a monster appear in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? It was no wonder why Hall Master Sai paid such high regards to him. If he knew that the other party had such identities, he would have never dared to try pulling his weight before him. Indeed. But putting that aside for now, our young master has saved your life. Did you think that a single thanks would suffice? The plump narrowed his eyes and stared at Hall Master Han in disdain. I recall seeing you offer quite a few good things to the demon-sank beast when you were trying to tame it. Why? Do you think that your life isn't even worth that of a single spirit beast? Hall Master Han's body froze. Indeed. It was a breach of propriety to brush off his savior with just a word of thanks. Initially, I intended to use this spirit stone to attract the demon-sank beast and tame it. Taking out the middle-tier spirit stone from before, Hall Master Han glanced at the demon-sank beast, who was still busy chewing on grass. Knowing that it would be impossible for him to tame it at this point, he gritted his teeth and passed it over. However, it seems like there's no use for it now. I'll give it to Zhongshe as a token of appreciation for saving my life then. The plump man took the spirit stone, fiddled around with it, and frowned. Just one? I only have this single one. Hall Master Han's face reddened. There weren't too many middle-tier spirit stones throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. It took him a lot of effort and luck just to procure this one. Alright then, so be it. Seeing that this was the limit of the financial ability of the other party, Sun Qiong shook his head and presented the spirit stone to Zhongxian. Young master, UN. Catching it, Zhongxian nodded his head in satisfaction. Honestly speaking, Sun Qiong was truly a capable subordinate. He was able to accurately deduce that Zhongxian was interested in the middle-tier spirit stone, and knowing that the latter probably made a move for it, he stepped forward and closed the deal. In the end, master teachers weren't saints. It wasn't unusual for one to demand reward after doing another a favor, and master teachers were no exception as well. Otherwise, given how many people were in need in this world, wouldn't he die of exhaustion? Putting away the spirit stone in his storage ring, Zhongxian turned to Hall Master Han and said, I just happen to require middle-tier spirit stones, so I'll humbly accept your gift. But in any case, I won't take advantage of you. In exchange, I'll treat your injuries to compensate you. Treat my injuries? Hall Master Han was stunned. You're saying it's possible to treat such severe injuries? Under the relentless heavy blows of the demon-sank beast and overexertion of his body, his internal organs had been shifted and his cultivation had fallen greatly. It would be difficult to treat such injuries at his age. Thus, when Zhongxian said that he could treat him, the first thing he thought was that it was impossible. Since I've said it, naturally, I'll be able to do it. However, if you don't wish to, we can drop the matter. Zhongxian waved his hands. Of course I want to be treated. Recalling the other party's identity as a physician and master teacher, Hall Master Han hurriedly nodded his head. If it was in the past, he would have never believed such words. However, looking at the demon-sank beast obediently chewing on a patch of grass, he couldn't help but think that the young man before him just might be capable of doing so. After agreeing to the matter, Hall Master Han asked, Zhongshe, do you need any medicinal herbs? I have some of them here. Even though he wasn't a physician, as a cultivator and a beast tamer, he still retained some basic knowledge on medicine. Given the extent of his injuries, without the complementation of centuries-old medicinal herbs, it would be very difficult for him to make a full recovery. And he happened to have some of these medicinal herbs. Just as he was about to take these things out, the young man before him spoke up. Medicinal herbs? There's no need for any. Demon-sank beast, come over and knock this fellow out for me. Chapter 500, Knockout Treatment Method. Knockout? Not only did Hall Master Han widen his eyes, the others were baffled by Zhongxian's actions as well, and they stared at one another in confusion. Aren't you going treat Hall Master Han's injuries? What do you mean by knocking him out? There's no need to worry. This is our old master's exclusive technique, knockout treatment method. Sun Chong explained. Having followed behind Yang Shi for a period of time, he knew that this was the old master's exclusive technique. As the direct disciple of the old master, it was natural that the young master would know of it as well. The crowd became even more perplexed. To treat someone by knocking them out. Such a method existed in the world. Who? Before the crowd could react, the demon-sank beast suddenly turned around, walked over, and stared at Hall Master Han, causing the other party's hair to stand on end. Zhong Shi. Why don't we pass on the knockout? Perhaps medicine might be better. Recalling how the gigantic fellow charged at him relentlessly to kill him previously, Hall Master Han started trembling uncontrollably. Would this big fellow use this opportunity to get back at him? Zhong Shi told it to knock him out, but what if it used this chance to kill him instead? It was better to be safe than sorry. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Demon-sank beast, what are you hesitating for? Hurry up. Zhong Xian frowned. Roar. Hearing the instruction, the demon-sank beast howled in delight. Stepping forward, its thick wings immediately flew over and struck him. Hall Master Han really cried this time around. If only I'd known that this was your treatment method, I would surely have just given the middle-tier spirit stone to you for free. I don't need such compensation. Peng. In his current condition, it was impossible for Hall Master Han to escape. Thus, when the wings struck the back of his head, his vision turned black and he passed out. The corner of Zhao Feiwu's mouth twitched violently. Her body trembled slightly, and at this moment, she felt extremely glad that she was countless kilometers away from this fellow back when she was treated. It was fortunate that he only presented the solution via the wall of dilemma. If he had been the one to administer the treatment personally, would this have been her fate as well? Was there really such a treatment method in the world? Being feeble since young, she had seen innumerable top-notch physicians. However, she had never heard of a case where one had to be knocked out in order to be treated. Perplexed, she turned her gaze over, only to see Zhong Xian walking over to the unconscious Hall Master Han and placing his forefinger and middle finger on the other party's wrist. A moment later, he stood up, flicked his wrist, and a few silver needles appeared in his hand. Su 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 su. The silver needles shot through thin air and landed straight on the numerous acupoints throughout Hall Master Han's body. Then, with a grabbing action, all of the silver needles returned back to his hand. Done. Clapping his hand, Zhong Xian turned to Hall Master Sai and said, "Wake him up." Done. Everyone was dumbfounded. Were you really treating him or were you just fooling around? After placing a few needles, you say that you're done. Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai stared at one another. They had clearly seen the location of where the needles landed. Rather than acupoints, those were Ming men. There wouldn't be any other physicians who would dare to touch these vulnerable spots. Even if this was a secret art of some kind, it should be impossible to induce a full recovery just by being pierced on several locations for a brief moment, right? Or was the treatment method simply too profound for them? Hall Master Sai had only seen the other party identifying treasures and earning their acknowledgement, but he had never seen the other party treating someone before. As such, he was totally baffled by the sight before him. Even so, since the other party had already spoken, he nodded his head and stepped forward. Pressing on the other party's philtrum, he infused a surge of zhenqi in. Cough cough. Coughing violently, Hall Master Han opened his eyes. Who? Pressing against the ground, he hurriedly retreated backward. Zhongshe, can I pass on the treatment? But before he could finish his words, he suddenly paused and his eyes widened. As a cultivator, he was well aware of the various changes in his body. Given how he was able to push himself backward just by exerting some force on his palm, and the unobstructed flow of origin energy in his body, there could only be a single possibility. He had fully recovered from his injuries. How was that possible? Doubtful, he stretched out his hand and grabbed forward. A massive handprint immediately gathered in the space in front of him. The handprint distorted the air in the surroundings with its immense might, reminiscent of a floating block of water, threatening to tear through space at any moment. Great ocean seizing hands. Hall Master, why you have recovered? Seeing his actions, not only was Hall Master Sai and the other perplexed, the other elders who had collaborated with him on the formation also widened their eyes in shock, and their breathing hastened. Great Ocean Seizing Hands was Spirit Intermediate Tier battle technique. It was incomparably powerful, and without sufficient origin energy and strength, it was impossible to execute it. As the core of the formation, he was the one leading the fight against the demon-sank beast previously. Thus, it was natural that he would bear the brunt of the attack and suffer the greatest damage. At the moment, every single one of them found it hard to even climb to their feet, and they felt as though they would breathe their last at any moment. Yet, the other party executed a battle technique which one could only utilize at their peak condition. Did it have to be so exaggerated? I've recovered. Hall Master Han widened his eyes in disbelief. Suddenly recalling something, he flicked his wrist and a spear appeared in his palm. Then, he shook it slightly. Wang. A surge of weapon intent was suddenly flicked out, and it stabbed into a gigantic boulder not too far away. Boom! The boulder exploded into innumerable smithereens. Clear passageway, flawless intent. Hall Master, you've recovered from the trauma you sustained before as well? Elder whose lips shuddered. In truth, the reason why they, the elders of the Beast Hall, were willing to assist their Hall Master in capturing the demon-sank beast even despite the threat of danger was not due to his order but in awe of the Hall Master's character. Back then, in order to help them tame their spirit beasts, he had once entered the depths of a marsh and was bitten by a poisonous worm. Ever since then, there had been a blockage in his meridian, resulting in a trauma. As such, his weapon intent was unable to flow through his body, thereby ending his weapon cultivation there. If not for that, given the Hall Master's talent and strength, even if he couldn't tame the demon-sank beast, he would still be able to triumph over Luo Ming in the selections. There would be no need for him to go through so much trouble. The Hall Master had never demanded compensation from them for his sacrifice, and similarly, they were also willing to give their all for the Hall Master. No matter how tiring it was, they cultivated the collaborative offensive formation along with him without a word of complaint. They thought that the Hall Master would be limited by his lack of weapon intent for his entire life. Never in their dreams did they expect that just by being knocked out and pierced with a few needles, the other party would not only be able to execute the Great Ocean Seizing Hands, he would even be able to utilize weapon intent. What in the world happened? My trauma is gone? Since Elder who could tell this much, how could Hall Master Han, the person in question, remain ignorant of it? He hurriedly turned his sights to the young man before him. Oh. I realized that you have sustained some traumas, so I helped you treat those as well since it's convenient. You don't need to compensate me for that. Zhong Xian waved his hands casually. In truth, when Hall Master Han fought with the demon-sank beast previously, a book on him had already been compiled in the library of Heaven's Path. The reason why Zhong Xian went through all the trouble to knock the other party out and touch his pulse was to conceal the secret regarding his Heaven's Path Shunqi. The book compiled also reflected the other party's traumas as well. Since he was going to treat the other party, he couldn't possibly just go halfway. Besides, it wasn't difficult to do so either. Heaven's Path Shunqi could be turned into both medicine and poison with just a single thought of his. He had treated many people whose meridians had been blocked by lethal poison in the past too. Convenient. Hall Master Han's eyes reddened and he nearly went insane. He had looked up all of the physicians throughout Myriad Kingdom City but none of them had a solution to his problem. Because the poisonous worm had bitten him while he was executing weapon intent, even though he was cured of the poison eventually, some remnants of the poison resulted in his meridians being permanently blocked. He didn't even mention his hidden problem but Zhongshe had already treated it out of convenience. Did you have to be that extreme? Suddenly, a thought flashed through Hall Master Han's mind and he asked, Elder who, how long have I been out for? Given how all of his injuries were treated and even his traumas were gone, the treatment process must have taken a significant length of time. 2 hours? 4 hours? Or perhaps a day? How long? From the moment you were knocked out until now. I think around a minute has passed. Elder who calculated. A minute. Hallmaster Han's body swayed weakly. He had already been awake for half a minute, so that meant the treatment process took only a maximum of half a minute? How in the world did he do it? Since he was able to treat my injuries, he should be able to treat the other elders as well. Suppressing his agitation and shock, Hallmaster Han suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. He hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Zhongshe, Elder Hu and the others have gotten injured for my sake. If you can treat them as well, I'll be eternally thankful to you." It was due to him that the elders had all landed in such a state. He couldn't possibly just leave them in the dumps now that he had recovered. Our young master is a formidable physician, so his services aren't cheap. Sun Chong stepped forward. "I understand." Hallmaster Han hurriedly nodded his head. Flicking his wrist, the several thousand spirit stones that he had used to entice the demon-sank beast previously appeared in the ground before him. Under the sun, it looked like a mountain of crystal, and spiritual energy surged forth from the mini-mountain. Even though spirit stones were valuable as well, they meant nothing when compared to the lives of his old buddies. "All right." Putting away the spirit stones into his storage ring, Zhongxian first turned to Elder Hu and said, "I believe you all should know my treatment method." "I've heard everything." Elder Hu quickly nodded his head. "I know what I should do." After which, he turned to the demon-sank beast and said, "Come and hit me with all of your might. I can take it." The crowd. Zhongxian staggered. "The heck? It would suffice as long as you lose consciousness. Do you need to flirt with a spirit beast like that?" Suppressing his urge to spurt blood, Zhongxian said, "Cough cough. Actually, there's no need for it to make a move, you can use any means to make yourself faint. I'll be able to conduct my treatment as long as you're unconscious. It'll suffice as long as I lose consciousness." Elder Hu was taken aback. On the other hand, Hallmaster Han's vision turned dark. "If it was that simple, why did you have to get the demon-sank beast to make a move on me? Do you know how to close to death? I came because of it." "All right." After confirming the treatment method, Elder Hu stretched out his palm and struck his forehead without any hesitation. "Pada." His vision immediately turned dark and he fainted. Zhongxian stepped forward. A moment later, Elder Hu woke up. Leaping to his feet, his eyes glowed brightly. A moment later, Elder Hu woke up. Leaping to his feet, his eyes glowed in agitation. "It's your turn." After treating Elder Hu, Zhongxian walked up to another elder. Knowing what Zhongxian needed, without wasting any time, he immediately struck his own forehead. And thus, Zhao Feiwu and the others saw an incredibly bizarre sight unfolding before them. Renowned transcendent mortal beast tamers of the Myriad Kingdom City knocked themselves out as soon as Zhongxian approached them. And after having some needles pierced into several acupoints, they regained their vitality and leaped around excitedly. So fast. Only at this moment did Hallmaster Han finally get a chance to see the other party's treatment method and speed, and his throat turned dry. Even though Elder Hu's words had already given him some idea of it, witnessing it with his own eyes still left him in shock. Making a rough calculation, from the moment that the elders were knocked out to the point that the silver needles were extracted, not even 20 breaths had passed. In less than 20 breaths, in the young man's miraculous hands, the severe injuries of the patients disappeared. On top of that, the patients were even able to leap around freely as soon as they woke up, as though the injuries they had sustained before were imaginary. He didn't know much about physicians, so he couldn't make a clear judgment on the other party's capability. However, one thing he could make judgment on was the other party's beast taming capability. To make the demon-sank beast submit with just a single bellow, and making it feed on grass willingly from an instruction, the other party's beast taming ability had at least reached 5-star. A 5-star beast tamer and a potential 5-star physician. Really, where in the world did this monster come from? Chapter 501, Demon-sank beast, breakthrough. A few minutes later, the injuries of Elder Hu and the others had fully recovered. Every single one of them was overflowing with vitality. "Thank you, Zhongshe." The crowd expressed their gratitude. Even though they had already paid for the services, so they didn't owe anything to Zhongxian, the other party's medical skill was still simply way too astonishing. It was almost miraculous, and it was hard to believe that someone in the world was capable of such a feat. The demon-sank beast has already been tamed by Zhongshe, so it would be a waste of time if we were to remain here. Thus, I won't be imposing on you all any longer. Farewell. Hall Master Han clasped his fist and bade his farewell. His primary objective here was to tame the demon-sank beast. However, since Zhongshe had already tamed it, there was no reason for him to remain here any longer. Even though he had failed to tame the demon-sank beast, he had recovered from his trauma. With this alone, he was confident that he could triumph over Luo Ming and obtain the qualification to study at the headquarters. So, his final objective could be said to have been met. In a sense, his trip wasn't wasted. Farewell. Zhongxian, Hall Master Sai, and the others clasped their fists as well. Given how talented Zhongshe is, if I'm not mistaken, you should be participating in the Master Teacher Tournament 2 months from now, right? I'll definitely head there personally to support you. Hall Master Han chuckled before leaving. Given the extent of the other party's capability and his identity as a master teacher, and considering the major affairs surrounding the Myriad Kingdom City during this period of time, it wasn't too difficult to deduce his next objective. No matter what, he owed the other party a debt. If there was a chance, he would like to repay it. Besides, given the other party's immense capability and his proficiency in various occupations, he was a person worth befriending. After Hall Master Han and the others left, the area grew quiet once more. Zhongshe, do we enter the tomb now or do we rest here first? Luo Zhu looked at Zhongxian with a look of admiration. The previous time he came here, he had to operate secretly for fear of being noticed by the demon-sank beast. Yet, the person before him had managed to tame this notorious fellow. This was something he could never have imagined in the past. With the threat from the demon-sank beast out of the way, there wasn't any reason for them to rush anymore. They could enter the tomb whenever they liked. Hold on for a moment. We'll enter after I solve the problem the demon-sank beast is suffering from. Zhongxian waved his hands. Problem? It isn't injured though. The crowd was perplexed. This big fellow possessed such mighty strength and its defense was invincible within the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Even when battling against Hall Master Han and the others, it was able to crush all of them easily. Solving its problem? What kind of problem could it have? The soul-devouring ants don't have much of an influence on ordinary life forms and humans. However, they are yin attribute life forms, otherwise they wouldn't have sustained themselves by consuming souls, and after loitering around this area for a month or two, even if the demon-sank beast didn't really come into contact with them, it would still be affected by the yin energy they exude. Placing his hands behind his back, Zhongxian explained impassively. The intense battle just a moment ago caused the yin energy to seep into its internal organs. If it isn't cleared away swiftly, it'll be hard for it to achieve any breakthroughs in the future. There's actually such a matter. If that's the case, shouldn't we stay away from those soul-devouring ants as well? Upon hearing that even a powerful existence like the demon-sank beast would be affected by the soul-devouring ants, everyone was alarmed. They immediately scanned their surroundings warily. At this moment, after consuming the cooked deer-horde beast, the satisfied soul-devouring ants had burrowed back underground. Thus, there wasn't any trace of them left on the surface. If they hadn't witnessed it personally, it would have been difficult for them to believe that this ancient creature, which hadn't been sighted for such a long period of time, truly existed in the world. To consume even formations. It was truly a fearsome existence. It'll be fine as long as you all don't consume the water from the lake, Zhongxian said. The soul-devouring ants can sense that the soul oracle tomb is beneath the lake. Thus, even though the water may seem clean, it is actually filled with the corpses of these fellows. One of the main reasons why the demon-sank beast is plagued by the yin energy of these fellows is due to drinking the water from the lake. Everyone came to a realization. These creatures were drawn here by the scent of the soul oracle tomb. Realizing that the tomb was beneath the lake, it was inevitable that some of them would be unable to resist the allure and attempt to head for the soul oracle tomb. As time slowly passed, the water became unsafe for consumption. Then, how can this problem be solved? Luo Zhu asked. Since even the demon-sank beast could be plagued by the yin energy, What should they do if they were affected as well? Everyone also turned their gazes over. They wanted to know the solution so that they would know what to do if they were to ingest the water from the lake accidentally. Simple, you just have to chew on the grass by the side. Zhongshen pointed. Chew on the grass. Taken aback, everyone instinctively turned to the demon-sank beast, which was still busy chewing on the grass, with a dumbfounded expression. They thought that Zhongshe's act of ordering the demon-sank beast to chew on grass was a punishment, but from the looks of it now, it seemed like he had another motive in mind. This explained why this massive fellow didn't feel displeased in the slightest. It even went on and munched on the grass excitedly. If I'm not mistaken, this should be blue rain grass, right? This grass can be found all around the mountain. However, if I recall correctly, this grass should have no particular attribute at all. Why would eating this grass clear away the yin energy in one's body? Hall Master Sai was bewildered. As an appraiser, he boasted vast knowledge. As such, he was able to identify the grass in an instant. Blue rain grass grew on mountainous areas that were near a water source. It didn't have any effect or attribute, and as such, it couldn't even be considered as a medicinal herb. Why would it be able to expel the yin energy from the soul-devouring ants? It's true that this grass primarily has no attribute or effect. However, one has to take their environment into consideration as well. If it's the patch of grass over there, it'll be completely ineffective. Zhongshen pointed. He was pointing at the dense bunch of blue rain grasses that grew by the side of the lake. Everyone blinked their eyes in bewilderment. It was just a distance of several dozen meters. Why would the grass over there be ineffective? There was nothing different with their environment at all. Seeing the doubt on everyone's faces, Zhongshen smiled and shook his head. This is where the demon-sank beast relieved itself. In other words, it is its toilet. Toilet? Everyone blinked. The demon-sank beast carries the dragon bloodline, which is rich in yang energy. Naturally, its waste product carries powerful yang attribute. Under such nourishment, the blue rain grass in that area naturally took on this attribute as well. After explaining, Zhongshen turned to look at them and said, "If you are worried, you can cut a few stalks and bring it along with you. The moment you realize that something is amiss, just take a bunch out and chew on it." "I'll pass. Zhongshe, thank you for your advice. However, since you said it's fine, there should be no need to do so." Everyone hurriedly waved their hands. They were still agitated over it a moment ago, but after learning that those were grass which the demon-sank beast used to relieve itself, they immediately lost their interest. Knowing what the crowd was thinking, Zhongshen didn't touch on the topic any further. Instead, he walked up to the demon-sank beast. At this moment, this gigantic fellow had already consumed a huge quantity of blue rain grass already. The yang energy within its body was gradually searing the yin energy accumulated within its body. Taking out a few silver needles, Zhongshen casually pierced them into several locations on the demon-sank beast. Boom! A loud explosion sounded, and everyone immediately felt the demon-sank beast's aura rising swiftly. Is it going to make a breakthrough? Hall Master Sai and Jin Tsonghai stared at one another in shock. At Transcendent Mortal 5 Dan, one's soul would become even more harmonized with the environment, thus augmenting one's strength greatly. If the first 4 Dans of the Transcendent Mortal Realm, prolonged longevity, origin energy, yin-yang, and clarifying turbidity, could be considered as refining one's junqi and enhancing one's control over the environment, then from this realm onward, one's soul would be nourished and tempered. This was precisely the reason why even though Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan Pinnacle Master Teachers, despite their strength, could only be considered as 4-star Master Teacher. Unable to produce long-range tutelage Jade Token, they couldn't be considered to have reached half 5-star. Half-consonant spirit, similar to half-Zhongshe and half-Zhizuan, referred to a person who was infinitesimally close to consonant spirit realm but had yet to take the last step forward. Not only was the physical body of an expert at this level strong, his soul would tend to be exceptionally powerful as well. No transcendent mortal 4 Dan pinnacle expert would be his match. If say, The demon-sank beast was already overpowered due to its dragon bloodline and talents. It would be even more fearsome now. If it were to go on a rampage, even the old ancestor of Myriad Kingdom Alliance wouldn't be able to stand against it. Formidable. Hong long long. Amidst the shocked gazes of the duo, the demon-sank beast's rising aura finally came to a halt. Just as Zhongshe had guessed, it didn't manage to make the final breakthrough into consonant spirit realm, stopping at half-consonant spirit instead. Even so, with this strength, there was already no one who could subdue it in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance already. Raw. Knowing that it was only with his master's help that his cultivation had risen and his trauma resolved, it rushed forward excitedly to Zhongxian and bowed respectfully. Previously, it had only feared the other party due to the high possibility of the other party being a pure-blooded dragon due to his ability to utter the dragon language. However, at this moment, he felt truly grateful to the other party. If not for him, it wouldn't have been able to reach this realm without a century of hard work. Seeing its attitude, Zhongxian knew that this fellow was sincerely swearing fealty to him this time. Thus, he nodded his head in satisfaction and instructed, "That's right, we're diving to the bottom of the lake. Guard the area outside for us. If any human or beast dares to barge into this area, kill them without exception." The situation below was still a mystery, and having to watch their backs for enemies while exploring the region would have been troublesome. With this large fellow guarding in the area, they wouldn't have to worry about any knives behind their back. Raw. The demon-sank beast nodded its head. "All right, let's set off." After giving out the necessary instructions, Zhongxian surveyed the surroundings before leaping into the lake along with Luo Zhu. Zhao Yue and the others quickly followed suit. After so much hard work, the Soul Oracle tomb was finally right before them. Chapter 502. Celestial Designer. The lake was frigid and everyone immediately felt a bone-piercing chill as soon as they stepped in. Following behind Luo Zhu, Zhongxian dived down into the lake. Even the weakest among the crowd was at Zhizuan realm. At that level, holding one's breath for 20 to 30 minutes wasn't a problem at all. Even though Zhao Feiwu's cultivation was slightly lacking, Jin Songhai used his zhenqi to form a protective layer around her and kept transfusing zhenqi to her. As such, she was able to avoid suffocation. Initially, with the light that shone through the surface of the lake, they could still see the situation before them. However, as they went deeper in, darkness began to envelop them. Prepared, Luo Zhu took out a few night illumination pearls and passed one to everyone. Under the gentle light, the underwater world appeared clearly before them. Due to the excessive frigidity of the water, there were no life forms in it. Swimming downward, at around a depth of 70 to 80 meters deep, they finally saw the bottom of the lake. Corals of various differing colors filled area. It was impossible to speak underwater, so Luo Zhu communicated via gesturing to the crowd. He adept maneuvered around the coral-filled ground and advanced. Before long, a cliff appeared before them. The surface of the cliff was smooth, and it didn't seem as though there was anything unique about it. If one didn't know that a Soul Oracle tomb was hidden within it beforehand, it would be impossible to know that there was a hidden mechanism on it. Flicking his wrist, Luo Zhu took out a stone plate, and after feeling about the wall for a moment, he found a precise aperture and inserted the stone plate into it. Jia. A mechanism was activated. The cliff suddenly came to life and started opening up. What exquisite craftsmanship! Zhongxian's eyes lit up. Even though it was a mechanism created out of rock, there wasn't even the slightest mark on its surface that betrayed its identity. It might be less intricate than the Celestial Designer mechanical container, but its craftsmanship was still far superior compared to the other artifacts he had seen before. It seemed like the craftsman who built this Soul Oracle tomb was an expert. Even at worst, he must have at least reached 9mo. Legend had it that 9mo craftsmen were capable of creating machineries and puppets which even transcendent mortal experts would be unable to see through. From the looks of it, the legend was indeed true. It was no wonder why Luo Zhu was so confident that no one other than him would be able to find this location. Given how obscure the location was, it would indeed be very difficult to find it. The opening of the cliff face revealed an entrance. Luo Zhu took the lead and stepped in. There were several unique mechanisms to keep out water inside the cavern, blocking the flow of water. As the crowd stepped in, they immediately realized that the area was well ventilated. There wasn't the slightest feeling that the room was stuffy that came from lack of oxygen. This is the passageway to the Soul Oracle tomb. At the very end is the tomb itself. After everyone entered the passageway, the cliff face automatically closed by itself. UN. Zhongxian nodded. The crowd looked at their surroundings in interest. This was a narrow passageway. Under the illumination from the night illumination pearls, the group saw all kinds of inscriptions on the surface of the wall. Most of them were regarding the various rituals that soul oracles conducted. A sinister air loomed in the area. We should proceed slowly. There are a lot of fearsome traps placed along the passageway. Familiar with the environment within the ancient tomb, Luozhu reached forward and two child-sized puppets appeared before him. He had probably prepared these puppets specially for this occasion. Placing two spirit stones into them, the puppets headed straight down the passageway. Jeji. Barely after the first puppet took 3 steps, a strong gust of wind blew, and with a crisp sound, the puppet burst into smithereens. Everyone narrowed their eyes. The puppet that Luozhu took was crafted using a unique material known for its sturdiness. Even a cultivator of Jin Songhai's caliber would find it hard to smash it in a single blow. And yet, some unknown mechanism before them had caused it to be reduced to smithereens in a moment. If not for Luozhu warning everyone swiftly, that could have been the fate of one of them. In an instant, cold sweat immediately drenched the back of everyone here. As expected of one of the most feared occupations in the ancient era, the Soul Oracle tomb was indeed extraordinary. If Zhongshe hadn't seen through Luozhu's possession and allowed the Soul Oracle to guide them through this area, their entire group would have most probably been wiped out before even reaching the Soul Oracle tomb. Jeji. While everyone was still overwhelmed with shock, the second puppet advanced forward. However, barely after it took a few steps, just like the first puppet, it was smashed to smithereens as well. Within 5 steps, there are 2 death traps. I'll go on first and mark out the spot where you all should step on. Make sure to follow it closely, otherwise, I'll be unable to guarantee your safety, Luozhu instructed gravely. Yes. Knowing the importance of this issue, everyone nodded their heads. Luozhu proceeded forward carefully. However, as soon as he stepped forward, the whistling of the wind sounded and it shot past an area not too far away from him. From the looks of it, if one were to be struck by it, one wouldn't be too far from death even if one managed to survive that attack. However, with a puppet to test out the path, they would be able to avoid the traps in the way. Looking at the treacherous passageway, Hall Master Sai asked, "Is this a formation?" Given how danger was lying in wait throughout the passageway, could this be a slaughter formation? If that was the case, given Zhongshe's understanding of formations, they should have been able to break it and advance safely through. It isn't. Zhongxian shook his head. If it was a formation, he would have surely felt a disturbance in the spiritual energy in the air. But there clearly was none. The greatest fear of the soul oracles aren't humans but soul-devouring ants, and formations are ineffective on those creatures. Thus, it is unlikely for a soul oracle to incorporate a formation into their defensive mechanisms. If I'm not mistaken, these are mechanical trap. After a moment of contemplation, Zhongxian had finished his analysis. The soul-devouring ants were the nemesis of soul oracles, so naturally, they had to prepare some traps to protect themselves. Soul-devouring ants were capable of consuming the spiritual energy contained within a formation and forcefully halt it. Thus, mechanical traps were preferred as to formations. The crowd nodded in agreement. But if those are all mechanical traps, this will prove to be troublesome. None of us here are adept in this field. If only we had a celestial designer here, we'd be really spared a lot of trouble. Hall Master Sai frowned. Celestial designer? Sun Qiong and the others looked over. Zhongxian had never mentioned such an occupation, so they had never heard of it. Indeed. Celestial designer, also known as master mechanic, is an occupation of the lower 9 paths. They are skilled in designing these mechanical systems. Even though their creation might seem humble on the surface, They usually incorporate sword chi and battle techniques that could overpower even experts when they are activated. Hall Master Sai explained, this occupation also has their own organization, the Celestial Designer Institute. They specialize in designing the world's most exquisite weapon and traps. However, I've only read about this occupation in books. There isn't a branch in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and it's said that only an empire of Huanyu Empire's tier is qualified to build a branch. The artifacts designed by celestial designers are extremely complex and exquisite. It would indeed be difficult to bypass these traps without understanding the logic behind them. Zhong Xian nodded his head as a frown slowly appeared on his forehead. He had seen the complexity of the celestial designer mechanical container himself. If not for the Library of Heaven's Path, it would be impossible for him to open it. Even a single box could be designed so intricately. If a person of that occupation had assisted with the design of the traps in this passageway, the dangers that lurked in this passageway would be unimaginable. If a celestial designer had assisted with the design of the traps in this passageway, the dangers that lurked in this passageway would be unimaginable. Puha! Just as Zhong Xian was deep in thought, he heard the sound of a sharp knife tearing through flesh. Lifting his gaze, he saw Luo Zhu hurriedly retreating with a reddened face. His arm seemed to have been sliced by something, and it was bleeding profusely. Are you all right? Jin Songhai and the others hurried forward to help him stop the bleeding. I'm all right. Luo Zhu shook his head. The traps in this passageway seem to have become even more complicated than before. Even more complicated? How long is this passageway? How long did you take to reach the end? Zhong Xian asked. It is around 300 meters. The previous time I was here, I advanced bit by bit using the puppets and it took me around 4 days to get to the other end. Luo Zhu frowned, however, it seems like these traps change every single time one enters. My previous experience clearing the traps is completely useless now. 4 days. Zhong Xian was speechless. To travel 300 meters in 4 days, this passageway was indeed difficult. Indeed. But there's no other way around it. The sword chi contained within the traps possess the might of at least a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle. If one were to accidentally come into contact with it, one will be torn into half in an instant. Luo Zhu shook his head. Transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle sword chi? The crowd was astonished. When they saw the puppet being reduced to smithereens previously, they already had an idea that the sword chi emanated in the traps were fearsome. Even so, they didn't expect it to be so powerful. Even a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle expert would find it difficult to survive after being struck by such powerful sword chi. Not to mention, it would be difficult for them to dodge the attacks in such a narrow passageway. Do we really have no other choice other than to advance bit by bit? Zhao Feiwu frowned. That's right. The trap mechanisms left behind by celestial designers are incomparably profound, and they are ever-changing. If one doesn't know the pattern behind the changes, it'll be difficult to clear the traps. Luo Zhu shook his head. It won't work even if we were to destroy the mechanical system in this passageway. Zhong Xian frowned. Even formations, an intangible existence, could be stopped with a kick. If they could find the switch to the traps or the center of operation of the system, shouldn't it be possible to shut down the traps? Destroy. Luo Zhu smiled bitterly. How could it be that easy? Just like a water wheel, the artifacts left behind by celestial designers are constantly on the move. Even if one had the blueprint on hand, if one doesn't comprehend the logic behind it, it will be futile. If its designs could be overcome so easily, it wouldn't be such a feared occupation. Mechanical systems and formations were similar in the sense that even if an amateur were to have the blueprint in hand, if they couldn't understand the workings of the system, they would still be unable to decipher it. After all, mechanical systems were built to be continuously on the move. If one didn't understand the slightest bit of this occupation, one would be unable to get out of it alive, let alone destroy it. Indeed. This is the reason why celestial designers are feared. They are capable of incorporating mechanical systems into artifacts, thus crafting tools capable of slaughtering experts easily. Furthermore, these artifacts don't need to be powered by spirit stones. If I'm not mistaken, the energy required for powering these traps comes from the waterfall above. As such, unlike formations, compasses won't work. If one doesn't understand the logic behind the traps, one would never be able to overcome the trap. Hall Master Sai nodded in agreement. Compasses were capable of determining the flow of spiritual energy to detect the weak points of a formation. However, mechanical traps weren't powered by spiritual energy but kinetic energy. How were they supposed to decipher these traps? Hearing the analyses of the duo, the complexion of the crowd turned gloomy. The excitement from before had vanished altogether. Seeing that the morale is down, Zhongxian shook his head and said, even though compasses won't work, it doesn't mean that there are no other methods of deciphering the traps. Let me give it a try. After which, Zhongxian smiled faintly and gently touched the floor of the passageway with his palm. Chapter 503, Entering the Tomb. Be careful. Seeing that Zhongxian was touching the ground instead of studying the various logic governing the traps in the passageway, Luo Zhu felt faint-headed. Do you really think that you can analyze the entire mechanical system just by touching the ground? The traps designed by celestial designers were as complex and intricate as formations. There were innumerable types of mechanical system, and even for systems of the same type, there were countless variations. Not to mention, the design of the system would also affect its operation as well. Even a real celestial designer would have to take a long time analyzing the various properties of the mechanical system before being able to decipher it. No matter how skilled you are in the other occupations, it is impossible for you to apply the logic from those into this field. There's no need to panic. Allow me to rest for a moment first. After that, I'll continue testing out the traps with my puppets. Anyway, the one thing we aren't lacking is time. I've also brought sufficient water and rations, so there's no need to worry. Seeing that the morale was down, Luo Zhu consoled with a smile. In truth, his real occupation was a tomb raider, and he had already traversed such treacherous places innumerable times. He was used to it. However, the others were different. Having never encountered such a fearsome trap, it was natural for them to feel apprehensive. There's no way around it. We don't understand such traps at all, so we'll be depending on you then. Jin Tsonghai nodded. Don't worry. Even though the complexity of the trap has increased, as long as I have sufficient time, I'm confident that I can still make it to the other end. You all just have to follow behind me. Luo Zhu nodded. Most experts or wealthy merchants would opt to hire a celestial designer to design their tombs for them, and so, he had already faced off with such traps many times throughout the years. Even though the trap had become more complicated, he didn't think that it would be a problem for him. Confident, Luo Zhu was just about to make preparations and make another attempt when he saw that Zhongshe, who was done touching the ground, had stood up. The latter stretched his back before walking into the passageway. Zhongshe. Luo Zhu immediately narrowed his eyes in fear. Despite having tested the area with his puppet beforehand, he was still nearly torn in half by some sword chi. Wasn't it suicidal to be charging in so recklessly? Panicking, Luo Zhu was just about to pull Zhongshe out when the young man suddenly lifted his leg and kicked at the wall beside him. Hong long. An intense buzzing sound echoed throughout the cavern, and the crowd felt the ground beneath them shake. All right, the traps have been disabled. After which, the calm voice of the young man echoed. Before the crowd could react, he began walking in with widened strides. The traps have been disabled. Seeing how nothing was triggered despite Zhongxian's casual movements, Luo Zhu's expression made his frenzy apparent. What was going on? He had just tried it out for himself, and the trap in the passageway was clearly much stronger and complex from before. Even a person like him, who often hung out by the tombs, would find it hard to clear the entire passageway without half a month of effort. Yet, the other party managed to do it with a single kick. Are you for real? This was a mechanical system designed by a celestial designer. Luo Zhu was already prepared to have several hundreds of his puppets destroyed, and yet, the other party, with a single kick. Luo Zhu was on the verge of going mad. He turned around to look at the crowd, only to see the others staring at him in bewilderment. Didn't you just prattle on about how formidable this thing was? Why did Zhongshe manage to stop the entire thing with just a single kick? Let's go on. Luo Zhu felt stifled. However, given how Zhongshe was capable of even dealing with a possession, it wasn't entirely impossible for him to have comprehended the various skills of celestial designers as well. Consoling himself like that, he advanced through the passageway. As expected, the traps in the passageway were truly disabled. Nothing was triggered as the group walked by. Soon, reaching the very end, a vast hall appeared before them. Upon seeing the hall, Luo Zhu said with a grim expression, "Previously, I was possessed as soon as I reached this point, so I didn't dare go any further." Zhong Xian scanned the hall. Possessing a length and width of around 20 to 30 meters wide, it was reminiscent of an underground palace. At the very center of the hall were 4 huge ashen-green coffins. It was impossible to determine what material the coffins were made of, but they looked extremely heavy. Eye of insight. Instead of rushing into the room, Zhong Xian raised his eyebrows and scanned the room once more. A moment later, he frowned. He found that he couldn't peer into the contents of the coffin. Most probably, it was a creation beyond that of his current cultivation realm. I wonder if I can get any detail on the room from the ground. Even though the Eye of Insight was unable to provide him with any useful detail, Zhong Xian didn't panic. Instead, he bent down and touched the ground. Previously, recalling how he'd opened the Celestial Designer mechanical container, Zhong Xian thought that since the traps operated by a mechanical system as well, it should have a flaw. Thus, he gave it a try and to his delight, it really worked. The Library of Heaven's Path immediately reflected the name and flaws of the traps. After looking through, Zhong Xian came to a realization. These traps were actually similar to formations, they had a life gate and death gate as well. Otherwise, how was anyone supposed to bypass these traps? Not only so, there was also a core as well. As long as one found the center of operations, no matter how powerful a trap was, it could be made redundant. After all, without energy, no matter how powerful a machine was, it would be useless. This was the reason why Zhong Xian could stop the entire mechanical system with a kick and lead everyone in. Who? A book appeared in Zhong Xian's mind. Green ash rock, naturally formed in the depths of the ground. It is resilient. With just a brief glance, Zhong Xian nearly spurted blood. He thought that even though the Eye of Insight was ineffective, he should be able to find out something regarding the coffin or the hall via the Library of Heaven's Path. Never in his dreams did he expect for an analysis on the rock he just touched to appear instead. The passageway constitutes the entirety of the mechanical system, that's why information regarding the traps was reflected when I touched it. On the other hand, this is just a normal tile, so it reflects exactly what I touched. This is similar to the case when I touched the bookshelf back then. Dismal, Zhong Xian soon understood. Back then, when Zhong Xian attempted to gather all of the books on a bookshelf in a single go by touching the bookshelf, a similar occurrence happened. It seemed like the Library of Heaven's Path classified matters by an entirety. Otherwise, it would only reflect what Zhong Xian came into direct physical contact with. But thinking about it, if he were able to know the condition of the entire continent just by touching the floor, that would be a little ridiculous. Seeing the serious expression on Zhongshe's face, Luo Zhu took the lead and explained, "There's no danger here. We can enter the hall." When he stepped into the hall, nothing particular occurred. Thus, the group behind followed suit. These are the coffins housing the soulless metal humanoids. The one that I took came from here. Walking up to the coffin, Luo Zhu pointed and spoke anxiously. Back then, it was precisely when he opened the coffin and was about to take away the soulless metal humanoid that he was possessed. As such, he already had a trauma regarding the matter, and thus, he didn't dare to step forward. "Let me take a look." Nodding his head, Zhong Xian walked forward. As expected, one of the 4 coffins was open, and its interior was completely empty. He touched the empty coffin. Who? A book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. Grade 7 metal coffin, forged by 4-star blacksmith Xu Zhe. It is used as a container to house a soulless metal humanoid, and it won't decompose over time. Flaw number 1, it cannot be used to house a normal corpse. The introduction and flaws regarding the coffin were detailed in the book. Grade 7 metal coffin? After reading through the details, Zhongxian was perplexed. Based on the description in the Library of Heaven's Path, this coffin should only be used to store soulless metal humanoids. It shouldn't contain any souls at all. If so, why would Luozhu have been possessed? Thus, he turned to an unopened coffin and touched it. It was also a grade 7 metal coffin, and its purpose was the same as well, storing soulless metal humanoid. There wasn't much of a difference from the first one. Zhongxian went on to touch the others and they reflected the same conclusion as well. Knowing that they were containers for soulless metal humanoid, Zhongxian swiftly lost his interest. The purpose of his journey was to obtain the inheritance of the soul oracles. The soulless metal humanoids didn't mean much to him. But in the end, these items were of great value. Previously, Zhongxian had managed to sell it for 20,000 spirit stones. Even though he didn't need it, he could still earn substantial wealth from their sales. Seeing as Zhongsha touched all 4 of the coffins, Luozhu asked anxiously, "Zhongsha, I was possessed here. Should we open the other coffins?" The others were also awaiting Zhongxian's decision. "Don't open them first." Even though there were no problems reflected on the books, Zhongxian couldn't guarantee that no mishap would occur when the coffins were opened. It would still be fine if a soul of the level of the one who possessed Luozhu previously appeared, but if a powerful were to appear instead, Zhongxian could not say for sure whether his Heaven's Path Shenqi would be effective on the latter. It was better to proceed carefully. Put the coffins directly into the storage ring. "We'll open them after we get out," Zhongxian said after a moment of contemplation. "All right." Sun Qiong had been waiting for these words. He hurried forward, stretched out his hand, and swept the 4 giant coffins into his storage ring. "These belong to the young master. No matter who you are, don't even dream of laying your hands on them." Cough cough. Seeing how shameless Sun Qiong was behaving, Zhongxian's face reddened. He turned around, issued some instructions, before proceeding ahead. "You all wait here first. I'll look around the area." The hall had an eerie appearance, and it felt desolate. The walls were all made of the tough greenish rocks. It seemed like the builder really put a lot of effort into building this hall. Not only did he excavate the entire area, he even used the toughest material to reinforce its structure, ensuring its long-term durability. Touching the walls around the room, Zhongxian didn't find any traps. Thus, he advanced forward. The hall was linked to another narrow passageway. Walking up to it, he bent down and touched the ground. "Who?" A book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. "It's just an ordinary passageway." The book recorded the details of the floor material reflected in the book, thus proving that there weren't any mechanical traps inside. Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhongxian soon came to a realization. Such traps were expensive. It was normal for traps to be laid at the entrance for fear of invaders, but setting them up in the interiors seemed a little ridiculous. Since the purpose of those traps was to prevent anyone to entering the tomb at all, it would make more sense to spend the money on reinforcing the traps in the entrance. He turned around and shouted, "There is no danger here, come over." The group hurried over. Zhongxian led the way forward. The passageway wasn't long, extending on for only a distance of 10 meters or so. At the end, another vast hall appeared before them. It was much larger than the one before. "Based on what I know, the first chamber is for the protectors of the Soul Oracle, the soulless metal humanoids, while the second chamber is the main chamber prepared for the Soul Oracle himself. This should be where the souls of the Soul Oracles lies." Luozhu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "You mean that we'll find the souls of the Soul Oracles here?" Zhongxian asked. Luozhu nodded. "Since this is the main chamber." "I believe so." Upon hearing the other party's confirmation, Zhongxian raised his head, and with a glance, a deep frown suddenly appeared on his face. "Teach this. What is going on?" Chapter 504, Second Acknowledgement of the Heavens instead of a hall. What that appeared before them was a field of flora and fauna. A refreshing fragrance tickled their nose, and in the skies, they saw white clouds floating by. It was as though they had returned back to the mountains. Could this be an illusion formation? Hall Master Sai and the others were taken aback. How could there be plants growing in an underground chamber? Not to mention white clouds and blue skies. Clearly, it was an illusion. The only explanation for this bizarre sight was that it was an illusion formation. This isn't a formation. Zhongxian shook his head. As a formation master, he would surely be able to tell if it was one. However, there wasn't the slightest disturbance in the spiritual energy before him, and the sight before him felt incomparably real. It was as though one was traversing through space, and it felt indescribably bizarre. Is this a mechanical trap? No, that can't be. Mechanical traps aren't capable of producing such effect. In the end, mechanical traps operated based on logic. They weren't capable of producing these flora, fauna, and flowing water before them. Let me test the situation out with a puppet. Perplexed, Luozhu flicked his wrist and a puppet appeared. Then, the puppet slowly walked toward the field at the end of the passageway. Who? As soon as it stepped out of the passageway, it immediately disappeared without a trace. What happened? Everyone leaped back in shock. How could the puppet simply disappear all of the sudden? Even if a mechanical trap was activated, at least the fragments of the puppets should remain. To disappear as soon as it walked toward the end of the passageway. This was way too bizarre. Could this be a teleportation formation? Hall Master Sai's throat went dry. Everyone turned to look at him doubtfully. The teleportation formation of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance is only capable of transferring words and information, and they are known as communication walls. Hall Master Sai said, with a trembling voice, it said that at grade 6, teleportation formation will gain the ability to transfer material objects such as food, money, equipment, and even artifacts. At grade 8, even life forms can be transported. In other words, even a human can leap through space. Transporting a human? The crowd was astonished. Zhongxian also widened his eyes in shock. As a 4-star formation master, he had a deeper understanding of formations than Hall Master Sai. He thought that transporting information should already be the limit. To think that formations would be able to transport even a human. How deep of an understanding of space must one possess to be capable of setting up a formation capable of transporting humans? Given how the puppet abruptly disappeared, could this really be a formation of that level? If so, it was normal that they couldn't see or feel the puppet anymore. As an upper 9 paths occupation, formation masters had a high requisite on one's cultivation. If one's cultivation didn't reach the required level, one would be disallowed from studying more profound knowledge. It was just like how even though Zhongxian was able to inscribe a grade 5 formation plate, he was only considered a quasi-4-star formation master. A person who was capable of setting up a grade 8 formation definitely possessed cultivation beyond that of a transcendent mortal. To be able to get such a figure to set up a formation for him, how powerful must the owner of the tomb be? Since Zhongxian was able to come to this conclusion, the others also realized the same as well. Their faces immediately paled. If it was just a transcendent mortal 3-dan or 4-dan soul oracle, even if they were possessed, they would still possess a certain degree of self-preservation means. However, if the opponent they met were to be beyond that level, they wouldn't stand a chance at all. Zhongshe. Do we enter? The crowd turned to look at Zhongxian. Zhongxian fell into deep contemplation. If his conjecture was right, proceeding ahead would definitely put them in grave danger. He wasn't confident of holding his ground even with the Heaven's Pathshanchi. It could be said that certain doom awaited them if they were to proceed forward. But if they backed down now, how much longer would it take for Lu Chong to recover? For me, he was willing to even risk his life. What do I have to fear? Recalling how that young man stepped in front of him calmly to protect him, determination gleamed in Zhongxian's eyes. Lu Chong was willing to give up his life for him. As the other party's senior, if he were to back down in the face of danger, what rights did he have to be considered as the other party's teacher? Flinging his hands back, Zhongxian instructed, "You all wait here, I'll go in alone. If I don't return in 4 hours, I'll have to trouble Hall Master Sai and Zhao Gongzi to help my students and Sun Qiong get out. Teacher, I'm not leaving. I want to follow you." Zhao Wei stepped forward. "We share the same thoughts. We'll follow you no matter where you go. Yuan Dao and the others declared resolutely. If not for Zhong Laroche, they would still be ordinary students in Tianxian Kingdom. However, at this moment, every single one of them was a Zhizuan realm expert, each possessing the strength to lift a mountain. Since their teacher was willing to put himself with danger to save Lu Chong, how could they, as his students, back down? Zhong Xian felt a surge of warmth. However, the situation before him was too bizarre. It was too dangerous to bring them over. After a moment of hesitation, Zhong Xian shook his head and his complexion darkened. Are you all going to disobey my orders? Stay here. Teacher, we implore you to not chase us away. How can we possibly watch by the side as you put yourself into danger? Even if we were to survive this ordeal, we'd definitely be plagued by guilt in the future. Zhao Wei spoke resolutely. Teacher, please don't chase us away, even if it means disobeying your words, I'll go with you. Wang Ying said. She was usually the most indecisive one of the group, and yet, at this moment, the determination in her eyes was unwavering. Knowing that his students weren't able to simply watch on by the side as he ventured through danger, Zhong Xian eventually nodded his head after a long moment of contemplation. Since you all have made up your minds, let's go together then. The teacher for the students, and the students for the teacher. This is what a true relationship between a teacher and student should be. Watching this sight, Zhao Feiwu and the others felt touched. Previously, they had been wondering why a person of Zhongshi's capability would choose to bring around a bunch of young and weak students along with him. However, at this moment, they realized that the relationship of a teacher and a student transcended far beyond the impartation of knowledge. A teacher could brave through danger for their students, whereas a student could remain unmoved before danger for their teacher. It was this self-sacrificial spirit that made the relationship between the two so noble. Hong Long. At that moment, a powerful aura suddenly descended from the skies. A unique energy began gathering in the world. It was neither spiritual energy nor origin energy, but with a single whiff, one could feel their analytical ability growing stronger and their thought process becoming clearer. This energy swiftly gathered around Zhong Xian as though a torrent, refining his presence and disposition. Narrowing her eyes, Zhao Feiwu suddenly thought of something and her lips trembled in disbelief. It's Celestial Master Teacher. Jin Songhai was also taken aback. Celestial Master Teacher? How is that possible? Celestial Master Teacher meant that even the heavens were acknowledging one's identity as a Master Teacher. Even if one didn't undergo the various examinations of the Master Teachers, one could still be acknowledged by the masses. Despite the long history of the continent, only Kongsha had ever succeeded in being acknowledged by the heavens. To think that this Zhongsha would manage to achieve the same as well. Could this really be true? Indeed, it's really Celestial Master Teacher. Furthermore, it doesn't seem to be just 2-star. Hall Master Sai's face flushed red. As the head of the only appraiser hall in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, as well as a 4-star pinnacle appraiser, he had met with a lot of Master Teachers. However, he had never heard of a single one being acknowledged by the heavens. The other party had said that he was a 2-star Master Teacher, so even if the heavens were to acknowledge him, he should only be a 3-star Celestial Master Teacher at maximum. However, the overwhelming energy before him actually made him feel like submitting to the other party. Without a doubt, the other party wasn't just a 2-star or 3-star Master Teacher. However, as for his exact rank, Hall Master Sai wasn't a Master Teacher and he had never seen a Celestial Master Teacher before, so he couldn't make a clear gauge. But regardless of his rank, to be acknowledged by the heavens itself was already sufficient to send a ripple of shock through the world. This. Contrary to the shock the others were going through, the current Zhong Xian was a little dumbstruck. Previously, when he agreed to Zhao Ya and the others' request, he actually wasn't too keen on doing so. However, considering that his students would never grow up if he were to protect them tightly beneath his wings, he decided to let go. It was just like a seedling. If one were to use a wall to shield it from rain and storm, it would never grow tall. Thus, he reluctantly agreed to it. However, he didn't expect this to induce another Celestial Master Teacher acknowledgement. He had undergone such a situation before, so even though the inflow of the energy made him a little dizzy, he knew that this was a good chance for him to raise his strength. Thus, without any hesitation, he immediately sat down on the ground and focused his attention into absorbing the unique energy shrouding him. Hong Long. With the inflow of this strength, his soul depth raised swiftly. His thought process gradually became swifter and clearer. A meeting was taking place in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's Master Teacher Pavilion. We are the hosts for the Master Teacher Tournament this time around. Make some preparations, we have to at least get a good placing. Seated at the center seat, Pavilion Master Kang surveyed the group before him. Those within the room were all elders of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Su Fan and Ling Yuheng were also within the group. The location for the Master Teacher Tournament wasn't fixed. The 27 powers would take turns hosting the event, and it only happened that Myriad Kingdom City would be playing host this time around. This time, they were going to be battling on their home ground. It would be truly embarrassing if their results were as poor as before. Yes. The crowd nodded their heads. This time, our elders have nominated a total of 6 candidates. I have looked through the information you all have submitted and they are indeed young talents. However, there are only 2 slots for this tournament, so a round of selection will have to be conducted. Pavilion Master Kang continued. However, before he could finish his words, his body suddenly froze. The other elders also noticed something and they narrowed their eyes. They quickly turned their sights toward a single direction. Trembling of myriad tokens, harmony of the chimes. This is acknowledgement of a celestial master teacher. After a long period of time, Pavilion Master Kang finally managed to utter with a hoarse voice. Even though it's an acknowledgement of celestial master teacher and it has occurred in our guild, given how the remarkable geniuses of the other powers are gathered in Myriad Kingdom City at the moment, there is a possibility that one of them might be the one who triggered it. Indeed, if they were to be acknowledged by the heavens in Myriad Kingdom City, the phenomenon would appear in our guild. Hurry up and find out which geniuses are in the city at the moment. It seems like the champion of this tournament will surely be that person. The faces of the elders paled, and they muttered to themselves. Celestial Master Teacher was an existence acknowledged by the heavens itself. In the entire continent, only Kongsha had managed to achieve this feat regardless of which power the Celestial Master Teacher came from. There was no doubt that he would be the champion in the Master Teacher Tournament. Could it be him? Different from the reaction of the other elders, Su Shi and Ling Shi glanced at one another and a figure suddenly appeared in their mind. But soon, they shook their heads. He had just completed by 2-star Master Teacher examination, and he hadn't even reached Jizuan realm yet. How could he possibly be acknowledged by the heavens? Thus, it couldn't be him. Chapter 505, Oasis of the Mirage Deity. After a long period of time, Zhongxian finally finished absorbing the energy in his surroundings and stood up. As expected of Celestial Master Teacher. Even though his cultivation realm remained the same, at the prolonged longevity realm pinnacle, his comprehension of cultivation and battle techniques had deepened. With just this, his fighting prowess could be said to have raised by at least 2-fold. If he could fight equally with a transcendent mortal 2-dan intermediate stage previously, he would be able to match up with an advanced stage expert now. At the same time, his soul depth had also raised from 12.1 to 14.1, even though an increase of 2.0 was humble as compared to the effects of the Book of Heaven's path. If he were to cultivate normally, this leap would require at least decades of effort. In other words, this acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher had saved him at least decades of training for his soul depth. Fearsome. Also, his eye of insight and impartation of heavens will had also grown stronger. Using the eye of insight, he could now peer through existence's 2 small cultivation tiers above him. Meaning, he could easily see through the flaws of an origin energy realm intermediate stage cultivator already. As for impartation of heaven's will, his ability to induce trust in others had grown, and others would find it hard to refute his words. He had to expend his soul depth to coax Song Chao previously, but now, as long as he were to utilize the impartation of heaven's will, the other party would feel inclined to trust his words automatically. More importantly, by earning the acknowledge of the heavens, His will of mind had also progressed significantly in the lucid analytical realm. As expected of celestial master teacher, its effects were truly immense to a master teacher. Even though there was no change in my cultivation, I can feel that I'm not too far from making a breakthrough. With a deeper understanding of cultivation, it wasn't too difficult for him to bypass the barriers to reaching Origin Energy Realm. After all, he had studied a few hundred Origin Energy Realm secret manuals. Even though he hadn't compiled a flawless version of Heaven's Path Divine Art yet, he had a clear idea on the direction of his cultivation. As long as he had sufficient spirit stones, making a breakthrough wasn't too difficult. I should try to look at the field of grass before me once more with the eye of insight. Thinking that he might see something new with his improved eye of insight, Zhongxian lifted his gaze. It isn't a formation or a mechanical trap. There was a huge disparity between what he could see before and what he was seeing now. The previous obscurity had become crystal clear to Zhongxian's eyes. Did Zhongshe notice something? The crowd turned their gazes over. They had never seen a celestial master teacher before, but as a legend of the master teacher pavilion, they knew that it was anything but ordinary. It is a method used by soul oracles to beguile souls. In other words, what you all are seeing is fake, a mirage, said Zhongxian, frowning. But if it's a mirage, why did the puppet suddenly disappear? Luo Zhu found the matter hard to believe. At most, a mirage should only be able to confuse one. This explanation couldn't account for the disappearance of the puppet. The puppet had disappeared right after walking through the passageway. It was clear that some powerful formation had transported it away. Soul oracles have the ability to beguile all life forms possessing souls. They can make us all see the same image, and thus, inducing us to believe that what that lay before us is real. However, puppets are different. Puppets have no soul and consciousness, and as such, they can't be beguiled. Thus, it's not that the puppet disappeared but that it has stepped through the passageway. Since it is unable to enter the mirage, naturally, we can't see it, Zhongxian explained. Soul oracles could beguile life forms possessing souls and muddle their ability to distinguish truth from false. However, puppets were different. Possessing no consciousness, they couldn't be beguiled and naturally, they would step right through the mirage. If it's true, then could this be the soul oracles? Oasis of the mirage deity? Suddenly recalling something, Luo Zhu's face paled and he nearly fell to the ground. Oasis of the mirage deity? Everyone was baffled. Even the knowledgeable Hall Master Sai was confused. Oasis of the mirage deity is a skill unique to soul oracles. They are capable of using their soul energy to create an incomparably realistic sight that subconsciously draws one in, similar to the oasis in the desert. The moment one steps into the mirage, one's soul will be forcefully torn from one's body and come under the control of the soul oracle. Luo Zhu trembled as he explained. One's soul will be forcefully torn from one's body? Everyone was shocked. The greatest weakness of the soul oracles was their physical body. Once one lost this advantage over them, wouldn't one be powerless to their whims? Indeed. If we had entered just now, our souls would be torn from our body. Even if we managed to survive, we would be as good as dead. Cold sweat seeped down Luo Zhu's head. The faces of the others also paled. It was fortunate that they didn't charge ahead upon realizing the peculiarity of the matter. If they had really rushed over, they would have died for nothing. As expected of a soul oracle. Even their means were hard to guard against. Just that, one has to be at least 6-star to be capable of utilizing the oasis of the mirage deity. Could this be the tomb of a 6-star soul oracle? Luo Zhu asked doubtfully. Oasis of the mirage deity wasn't a skill that just any soul oracle could utilize. Only upon reaching 6-star would one be able to set it up. Just like master teachers and other upper 9 paths occupation, the techniques of the soul oracles also had a requisite on one's cultivation. As such, the ranking of a soul oracle was also linked to his cultivation realm. A 6-star soul oracle would possess a cultivation realm at the zenith of the transcendent mortal realm. Even if it was lacking a physical body, it wasn't an opponent that they could face. I think that it would be best if we leave right now. Hall Master Sai's eyebrows leaped in unease. Even though he was interested in seeing the tomb of a soul oracle and view the various artifacts contained within, he didn't have the courage to disturb the tomb of a former 6-star soul oracle. Jin Songhai clenched his fists tightly and said, "Indeed. It's best for us to not get involved with an expert of this level. The more knowledgeable one was, the more one understood one's own ignorance. Similarly, the higher one's cultivation realm was, the more they understood how powerful the top-notch experts were. Understanding the irreconcilable gap between them and a person who once stood at the zenith of transcendent mortals, they didn't dare to proceed any further. They knew that with their force, they would never be able to deal with a 6-star soul oracle, no matter how many years he had been dead for. Leave. That's a good idea." Lifting his head, Zhongxian smiled bitterly, "But it's already too late." He. At that moment, everyone suddenly felt a chill and a sinister laughter echoed in the passageway. To think that my oasis of the mirage deity would be seen through so easily. Not bad, it seems that quite a few bodies have come this time. The voice was bizarrely shrill, and it seemed to echo straight within the depths of one's soul, leaving one feeling unnerved. Voila! In an instant, the flowers, clouds, and blue sky before them disappeared, and a huge, empty hall appeared in its place. In the large hall, there was only a single coffin placed at a distance 40 to 50 meters away from the crowd. It was hard to tell how large it was from this distance, but from the looks of it, it was significantly bigger and heavier than the other 4 coffins in the first chamber. "You wish to possess us?" Zhongxian narrowed his eyes. Entering the lucid analytical realm, Zhongxian felt no anxiety, fear, or any negative emotions. After such a long sleep, since someone dared to stumble into my tomb, of course I should claim their bodies for my own use. The voice chuckled. As the other party spoke, Zhongxian scanned his surroundings with his eye of insight. Regardless of how powerful the other party was, he had already been dead for innumerable years. Given how he would rather resort to using a mirage than deal with them personally, it could only mean that he wasn't as powerful as they thought he was. As long as Zhongxian found his hiding spot, there might be a chance to turn the situation around. However, to his disappointment, he couldn't find any trace of the other party at all. "Don't waste your effort. If I don't want to appear, do you think that you can find me with your mediocre skills?" Seemingly noticing Zhongxian's intentions, the voice sounded once more. Zhongxian fell silent. The voice was transmitted straight into their soul, making it impossible to trace him via sound. It would indeed be difficult to find him so long as he wished to remain hidden. Turning around to glance at Jin Songhai and Hall Master Sai, the duo also shook their heads. It seemed like the two of them had the same idea in mind as well. Just as Zhongxian was racking his brain for a solution, Jin Songhai's voice sounded. "Zhongshe, I'll try to stall for time. You should take the chance to leave with Gongzi and the others." Turning his head, he saw that Jin Songhai's eyes were filled with the determination of a soldier ready to meet his demise. "You have an idea in mind?" Zhongxian sent a telepathic message. "I don't. However, I do have a few poisons that work on souls, so it might be effective against him." Jin Songhai replied grimly. The effects on poison weren't just limited to the physical body. Some of the more formidable poison could dissipate souls as well. Taking Zhongxian's innate fetal poison for example, it was planted in him while he was still a fetus. Given the nearly absolute nature of the poison, it was, in a sense, more fearsome than a soul-dissipating poison. "You wish to poison me? Ha ha ha, you should try to find me first." In the midst of the discussion of the duo, the voice sounded once more. "You can listen to telepathic messages?" Zhongxian widened his eyes in astonishment. They had communicated previously using telepathy, and only the two of them should know of the content of their words. Even Hall Master Sai, who was standing by the side, was completely oblivious to their interaction. Yet, this fellow actually could tell that Jin Songhai intended to poison him. That was way too fearsome. "Ha, it isn't just your telepathic message. Via your souls, I can even tell what you all are thinking." Harumphing coldly, the voice continued, "I advise you all not to make any futile struggles. Even though there is no danger lying in wait in the passageway, it can be locked down. While you all were beguiled by the oasis of the mirage deity, I locked down the area. It's too late for you to be thinking of leaving. Hearing those words, everyone turned their heads around and their faces immediately paled. Just as the other party had said, the passageway behind had been sealed tightly by a stone wall. Let me give it a try. With an awful complexion, Jin Songhai gathered his strength and struck the stone wall heavily. Hong long. There was a massive tremor. However, the stone wall seemed to have been protected by something powerful. Even the strength of a transcendent mortal For Dan was unable to move it, needless to say, shatter it. Let me give it a try as well. Stepping forward, Hall Master Sai took out a saber and slashed the stone wall several times. However, just like Jin Songhai, he didn't leave the slightest damage on the wall. This is the dragon severing lock, set up by a 6-star celestial designer. Only those who harness the strength of a transcendent mortal 9-dan cultivator can break it. You only have 2 fates before you. You will either meet your death here, or you will end up serving as my body. The voice chuckled. Dragon severing lock. Everyone's complexion became extremely awful. Advancing and retreating weren't an option for them. Were they really going to die like that? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.